3 years ago, my own sister personally sent me to a reform school. The fake son claimed I cost the company 100 million. My eldest sister threw me into reform school without a second thought. Told me to go learn some manners. My own parents just stood there, watching with cold eyes, acting like I was some kind of dirty stain on their perfect lives. 3 years later, I've learned my rules and come back. But now, they're the ones regretting it. After 3 long years, here I am again, standing at the front gates of the Zhou family mansion. To be honest, I never thought I'd see this place again as long as I lived. That night, 3 years ago, this is exactly where they dragged me out. I remember it so clearly. It was pouring rain. The ground was covered in mud. 2 security guards had me by the arms, violently dragging me away. I was clutching the doorframe for dear life. My nails literally split and broke. I smeared blood all over that frame. I bet you could still see the marks today. I kept looking back, screaming into the house. I screamed for mom and dad. Screamed for my sisters. I swore I didn't touch that 100 million from the company. I told them I never framed Zhou Ming. I begged them, just believe me, just this once, please. But no one believed me. They just stood up there on the steps, staring down at me. Looking at me like I was some rabid dog. Like I was just born evil. My dad couldn't even be bothered to look at me. He just turned his back. My mom was covering her mouth, crying. But she was crying over how she could have ever given birth to a thing like me. My oldest sister, Zhou Jingyue, just coldly ordered the guards to hurry up. She didn't want the neighbors laughing at us. My second sister just pushed up her glasses and said, "Send him in. Let him get properly reformed." My third sister, Zhou Yui, actually looked like she wanted to say something, but one glare from our oldest sister. And she didn't dare make a peep. And as for Zhou Ming, he was standing behind everyone else with his head down. His shoulders were shaking, making it look like he was absolutely terrified. But I was the only one who saw it. The moment he looked up, I saw that smirk in his eyes. That sick smile. I will never forget it as long as I live. 3 years, 1095 days. I'm back. It's a sunny day today. The sun is blazing. It's so bright it actually makes my eyes hurt. Standing out here in front of the Zhou family gates, holding this faded canvas bag. Just this one bag. It holds everything I've owned for the past 3 years in that place. I look down at my clothes, this dull, gray shirt. It's been washed until it's totally faded. But I have it buttoned up, neat and tidy. Even the very top button is fastened. The doctor told me that dressing properly is the first step to maintaining order. The doctor also said that people like me need order more than anything. And I am someone who follows the rules now. The gates open. The first one to come rushing out is Zhou Ming. He looks exactly the same. All clean and innocent. Wearing his soft, light gray loungewear, his hair falling softly over his forehead. Looking just like a harmless little bunny. But the second he sees me, his expression changes in a flash. First, he freezes, then his eyes instantly well up with tears. The corners of his mouth twitch up, forcing out this fake smile of pure surprise and heartbreak. He practically sprints over to me. "Brother, you're finally back." He grabbed my arm, his voice choking with sobs. "Brother, you've lost so much weight. You must have suffered so much in there. Mom, Dad, and I thought about you every single day. Praying for you to come back. Thinking about me every day." I didn't feel a single ripple of emotion. I just looked down, staring at the hand clutching my arm. These very hands were the ones that personally handed that forged evidence to our dad 3 years ago. "Brother, why aren't you saying anything?" Zhou Ming blinked up at me. "Are you still mad at us?" "Brother, I had no choice back then. All the evidence pointed to you." Before he could finish, my mother came running out from behind. She was wearing a dark red cardigan. Her hair was noticeably grayer than it was 3 years ago, and the wrinkles on her face had deepened. The moment she saw me, her eyes instantly welled up with tears. She stumbled down the steps, opening her arms wide to hug me. "Ting Ting, oh, my Ting Ting." She threw her arms around me, holding me incredibly tight, her whole body trembling. "You've suffered so much. It's all Mom's fault. Mom is so sorry." I just stood there, completely motionless. Her tears rubbed against my neck, warm, with a faint, salty tang to them. She still wore that same familiar perfume. In the past, breathing it in would make me feel safe. Make me feel like this was the scent of home. But now, only one thought crossed my mind. What do her emotions have to do with me? The doctor said emotions are just noise, and I don't need to listen to noise. I took a step back. The movement was very slight, but firm, just enough to slip out of her embrace. Her hands froze in midair, that stunned expression on her face. How should I put it? It was quite amusing. "Ting Ting." She stared at me, completely dumbfounded. "What's wrong?" "Brother just got back. He's probably just not used to things yet." Zhou Ming quickly stepped in to smooth things over, reaching out to support our mom. "Mom, don't be sad. I'm sure brother still cares about us deep down." My third sister, Zhou Yui, also ran out from the doorway. She was wearing a cream-white maxi dress, her hair flowing down. And her eyes were red too. "Ting Ting." She rushed over to grab my hand, but I dodged her by turning sideways. Her hand paused in the air, and she forced an awkward smile. "Ting Ting, how did you get so thin? Did you not eat well in there?" I'll have the kitchen make you something delicious in a bit. I looked at their faces. To be honest, I could clearly see the tears and heartache in their eyes, but I felt absolutely nothing. It was just this completely hollow feeling where my heart should be. Nothing at all, like a dried up well. You can throw a stone in there and not hear a single sound. The doctor was right. Emotions can absolutely be trained out of you. The clicking of high heels echoed from the stairs. My eldest sister, Jo Chin-yue, was coming down. She looked exactly the same. Wearing a dark suit, her hair pinned up without a single strand out of place. Her face was completely expressionless, and her eyes were cold enough to freeze you to death. She was the one really running the Jo family, and the very same person who personally sent me to that correctional facility all those years ago. She stood on the steps, looking down at me with absolute arrogance. Her eyes were still full of that same critical scrutiny. "You're back," she spoke, her voice just as freezing cold as always. "It's been 3 years. Did you finally learn how to behave in there?" As soon as she said that, the air in the living room instantly froze. My mother stopped crying, and my third sister completely shut up. Even Joe Ming went totally quiet, just standing off to the side. His eyes darting back and forth, waiting to watch the drama unfold. They were all staring at me. If this had been 3 years ago, hearing that would have made me instantly cower in fear. I would have lowered my head, my eyes all red and teary, and whispered, "I'm sorry, sis, I know I was wrong." I would have desperately tried to explain how good and obedient I was in there, and begged her to stop looking at me like that. But now, I just lifted my head and looked straight at her jaw. The doctor said, "Looking directly into someone's eyes can easily trigger unnecessary empathy. Looking at their jaw or collarbone is both polite and keeps you completely rational." I opened my mouth, my voice incredibly light, totally steady, without a single trace of emotion. "Director Joe." As soon as those words left my mouth, Jo Chin-yue's brow furiously snapped together in a deep frown. My mother gasped in horror. "Ting Ting, what did you just call your sister?" I completely ignored her and kept reciting the lines I had rehearsed in my head, finishing them all at once. "I need 3 things. Number 1, my own private room. Number 2, my personal phone. And number 3, my personal identification documents." I spoke every single word clearly, neither rushing nor dragging, like I was just registering at a company's front desk. My mother panicked, stepping forward to grab my hand. "Ting Ting, what nonsense are you talking about? This is your home. I'm your mother. Were you traumatized in there? Just tell me. Mom is right here." I dodged her hand again. "Mrs. Joe." I stared right at her. "Excuse me, can my requests be taken care of now?" The title Mrs. Joe was like a dagger, stabbing directly into her heart. All the color completely drained from her face. Her lips trembled, and massive tears came crashing down. "What did you just call me? Have you gone completely insane?" "Ting Ting, I am your own mother. If I don't call you Mrs. Joe, what should I call you?" "Ms. Joe?" I asked back with a completely sincere tone. My doctor taught me that radical honesty is the sharpest blade to cut through guilt trips. I wasn't trying to piss her off. I was just stating the facts. She is my biological mother, sure, but legally speaking, she is just Jo Jinan's wife. Jo Chin-yue let out a cold sneer. "Enough," she snapped, cutting off my mother's sobbing. She glared at me. "Looks like spending 3 years locked up in there really gave you some nerve. You think pulling this fake, pretentious act with your family is gonna make us cater to you?" She turned and snapped at the butler. "Give him back his ID and his old phone. Put him in the guest room at the very end of the 2nd floor. I'd love to see how long he can keep up this deadpan act." She thought I was acting. She assumed I was just trying to make them feel guilty, or staging some kind of protest. I didn't argue. My doctor said right and wrong aren't based on feelings, but on behavioral evidence. Whatever they think is just their own brain activity, and it has nothing to do with me. I grabbed my canvas bag, took my ID and phone from the butler, and turned toward the stairs. As I reached the landing, Joe Ming followed me up. He blocked my path. The people downstairs couldn't see us up here. All that fake heartache completely vanished from his face, replaced by a hushed, mock-concerned tone. "I'm really glad you're back," he sighed, stepping closer to me. "But bro, whatever you do, don't bring up that 100 million from back then. Our oldest sister is still furious. If you stir up trouble again, they might just lock you up again." As he said this, his eyes were glued to my face. He was testing me. He wanted me to react just like I did 3 years ago, to jump up and scream, "You stole the money, not me." Then he could conveniently throw himself down the stairs and the whole family would condemn me all over again. Such a familiar script. I stared into his hypocritical face. "Do you want me to be reasonable, or do you expect me to just keep taking the abuse?" I asked softly. Joe Ming froze. He clearly didn't expect such a random, out-of-nowhere response. "Bro, what are you talking about? I'm only looking out for you." My doctor said, "Lying is bad. Slander is bad." I looked straight at him, my voice even quieter than before, as if I were stating an absolute truth. "If you're just reminding me, you'll need to provide actual evidence tying me to that 100 million. If you're threatening me." I paused, my tone remaining perfectly polite. "Whoever crosses the line first deals with the consequences. Now, please step aside, young Master Joe." Blocking the way is also very rude. Joe Ming stared at me like he'd just seen a ghost. There was no anger in his eyes. And no fear either. All he saw in me was a lifeless pool of dead water. I ignored his frozen posture and simply walked right past him, heading to the guest room at the end of the hall. The moment I shut the door, I locked everything about the Joe family on the outside. The room wasn't very big, but it's kept pretty clean. The bed sheets are new. There's a potted pothos on the desk. I stand by the window, looking down at the neatly trimmed shrubs in the garden below. 3 years, this house hasn't changed a bit. But I'm not the same Joe Ting from 3 years ago. I pull out my old phone, which hasn't been charged in 3 years. I plug it in. The moment the screen lights up, I see countless unread messages, all from 3 years ago. I don't click on them. Instead, I naturally open the memo app and type out a single line. Observation log, day 1. Physical boundaries established. The doctor was right. Journaling is the best way to stay sane. I sit on the edge of the bed, watching the sky slowly darken outside the window. Joe Ming's face floats into my mind again. That fake, hypocritical concern. 3 years ago, I was fooled by that very look. I treated him like my own little brother. Told him absolutely everything, believed every word he said. And the result? He turned around and sold me out. Sold me out completely. I don't hate him. I really don't. The doctor said hating someone takes energy. I don't have that kind of energy. But I remember every single thing he did. I remember how he set the trap step by step. How he slowly pushed me into the abyss. I remember all of it. Footsteps echo from the hallway outside. Someone knocks on the door. Ting ting, it's Mom. Mom made some soup for you. Could you open the door, please? Don't move. Ting ting. Mom knows you're angry, but we're family. Blood is thicker than water. What a nice phrase. 3 years ago, when they sent me away, why didn't they say blood was thicker than water? I close my eyes, listening to the woman crying outside the door. I feel absolutely nothing inside. Observation log, day 1 concluded. Noise level, medium. Emotional fluctuation, 0. The next morning at 6 o'clock, I wake up right on time. It's a habit I picked up on the inside, no matter how tired I was or how late I slept the night before. My eyes must open at 6 a.m. sharp. Because being late meant punishment. Not getting up meant punishment. Everything had to follow the rules. I wash up. I hang the towel exactly 5 centimeters from the edge of the wall. The doctor said, when you can't control the outside world, you control your environment. I stare at my own face in the mirror for a while. I've gotten thinner. My eye sockets are sunken. My skin is rougher now, too. But my eyes are brighter than before. Clearer than before. The doctor said, that's because I've cleared out all those useless emotions. It's nice. When I go downstairs, the Joe family is already gathered. The long dining table is filled with an exquisite breakfast. There are even my favorite sugar cakes from that old traditional shop. In the past, every time I came back, my mom would buy me sugar cakes from this place. When my third sister, Jo Yui, saw me, her eyes lit up. She started to stand up to greet me, but one sharp look from our eldest sister froze her in place. Sit down, Jo Qingyue ordered coldly. I walked to the very end of the dining table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. I didn't make a single sound. Since you're back, some rules need to be set straight from the start. Jo Qingyue set down her coffee cup. The clink of the porcelain sounded incredibly harsh in the dead silent dining room. She pulled out a printed sheet of paper from beside her and slid it to the middle of the table. Rule number 1. Without my permission, you are not allowed to step foot outside this villa. Rule number 2. You will not touch any of the company's business, and you will not secretly contact any of your old acquaintances. Rule number 3. You are absolutely forbidden to speak publicly about what happened these past few years. The Joe family cannot afford that kind of humiliation. She glared at me, her tone sounding like a judge sentencing a man to death. Do you understand me? My mom tried to gently intervene from the side. Qingyue, Ting just got home. Aren't these rules a bit too? Mom, Jo Qingyue cut her off sharply. We sent him away in the first place to break him of that disgusting habit of lying. If we don't lay down the law now, he'll just end up ruining the Joe family all over again. I looked down at the paper in front of me. The print was crystal clear. Every single rule was designed to strip away my humanity and turn me into an invisible ghost. Joe Ming was sitting right next to Jo Qingyue. He considerately handed her a tissue, his voice dripping with fake gentleness. Don't be mad, sis. I'm sure my brother understands everything you're doing for him. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes filled with the sickening pity of a winner. Brother, please don't hold a grudge against our eldest sister. The family is just looking out for you. As long as you behave yourself and listen, we're still a family. Those words, looking out for you, felt like a rusty saw, grinding brutally against a wound that had only just begun to heal. I put down my silverware and lifted my gaze to meet Jo Qingyue's. President Joe, tell me, did you bring me back home? Or are you transferring a prisoner back to his cell? Jo Qingyue's face instantly dropped. What the hell did you just say? According to the law, illegally restricting someone's personal freedom is a criminal offense. I pulled out my beat-up old phone. Right in front of everyone, I hit the record button. Now, I'd like you to look right at my phone and repeat those 3 family rules you just made up. The dining room went completely silent. A dead, suffocating silence. My father slowly lowered his newspaper, his eyebrows knitting together in deep anger. My mother clapped her hands over her mouth in shock, looking at me like I was a complete stranger. Looking like she'd just been slapped across the face, Zhou Qingyue violently stood up. Zhou Ting, you have the audacity to lecture me about the law? Who the hell do you think you are? I am Zhou Ting. I stared blankly toward her collarbone, keeping my voice incredibly steady. My doctor told me, if you can't determine the true intent behind someone's actions, you should record them to preserve the evidence. The demands you just made go way beyond simple family rules. This qualifies as unlawful imprisonment. I stood up and slipped my phone into my pocket. My movements were as refined as a schoolteacher's. If you don't plan on repeating yourself, I'll just pretend that piece of paper doesn't exist. Zhou Qingyue was shaking with absolute rage. Her finger trembled as she pointed right at me. You ungrateful little wretch. You spent 3 years locked up in there and you still haven't learned any manners. Instead, you only learned how to scheme against your own family. Second sister, Zhou Rushao, had been totally silent up until now. She adjusted her glasses, her eyes carrying the cold, calculating scrutiny of a professional lawyer. Ting Ting, you've changed. She finally spoke. You've gotten smarter. You know how to use this kind of behavior to grab our attention. Or rather, to threaten us. She turned to look at Zhou Qingyue, her tone filled with absolute certainty. Big sister, in psychology, this behavior is known as a learned antisocial personality. He isn't trying to reason with us. He's trying to establish a sense of control. I stared right back at my lawyer of a sister. 3 years ago, she was the one who used her flawless, airtight logic to string a bunch of fake testimonies into an unbreakable chain. That was exactly what nailed my guilty verdict. Second sister, I addressed her with perfect politeness. Since you know the law so well, then you ought to know that without a court-issued restraining order, no one has the right to restrict a citizen's freedom of movement. As for grabbing your attention, I gave a self-deprecating smirk, the corners of my lips barely lifting. What makes you think I even want your attention anymore? The doctor always told me, you can never wake a person who is pretending to be asleep. You just have to rip the blankets right off them. I turned around, ignoring the spectacular array of angry expressions on their faces, and walked straight toward the door. Stop right there. Zhou Qingyue roared from behind me. I stopped in my tracks and looked back. Is there something else, CEO Zhou? Where do you think you're going? To get a new SIM card. I replied coldly, and I'm dropping by the hospital while I'm at it. What are you going to the hospital for? My mother asked in a panic. My doctor said that after being in a high-stress environment for so long, I need to take regular psychological evaluations, just to make sure I'm not a violent threat. I looked over at Zhou Ming, my gaze lingering on his perfectly fake face for a split second. After all, young Master Zhou looks awfully fragile. If I accidentally bumped into him, he might just accidentally trip and fall all over again. Zhou Ming's face instantly went pale. The sheer terror of being seen right through flashed in his eyes. I pushed the front door open. The sunlight outside was a bit blinding. I didn't look back, because I knew that right now, back in the Zhou family living room, Zhou Ming would definitely go running to my second sister, plotting how to use even more professional tactics to completely eliminate me, the unstable variable. All I have to do is wait. The doctor said that bad people will always leave traces of their greed behind. All I need to do is wait for them to slip up and play the role of a proper debt collector. Observation log, day 2. The mind games have begun. The subjects are showing severe emotional fluctuations. Noise levels are rising. By the time I walked out of the hospital, it was already past 4 in the afternoon. The psychological evaluation went well. The doctor said all my vitals are completely stable. Zero signs of aggression. I don't really have any self-destructive tendencies either. It's just that on the emotional empathy section, my score was terrifyingly low. The doctor said that's normal. Anyone who has been through that kind of environment would suffer from some emotional numbing. I don't really feel much. Anyway, whether I have emotions or not, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I just got my replacement phone. I slid the SIM card in and turned it on. A flood of messages poured in, all from 3 years ago. Some from classmates, some from old coworkers, and a few were from Zhou Yiwei. Ting Ting, where are you? Ting Ting, please answer my texts. Ting Ting, your sister is begging you, just say something. I didn't even read them. Just cleared them all. Let the past stay in the past. I walked over to the bus stop to wait for a ride. An old lady stood next to me holding a grocery basket. She probably just came back from the market. She glanced at me, probably thought my clothes were way too old and worn out. She took a couple more looks, but didn't say anything. I like this feeling. Nobody knows me here. Nobody looks at me like I'm that pathetic, unlucky son of the Zhou family. The bus arrived. I got on and found a seat by the window. The bus bumped along the road. I stared out at those familiar streets. The exact same roads I walked countless times 3 years ago. To be honest, this city is still just as bustling and vibrant as ever. But looking at it now, it feels like staring at a faded old photograph. Everything is still there, yet somehow, it feels like everything is gone. My phone buzzed. It was a text from that unknown number. Just one single line of text. Send me today's assessment results. I texted back a single word. Okay, the doctor said. She's the only person who truly has my best interests at heart. Even if her kindness is a bit cold, a bit ruthless, even a little scary, but she was right. In this world, rules are the only things that will never betray you. Only order is eternal. I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes. My mind drifted back to that night 3 years ago, right after I was first locked up. Locked inside a room with 4 blank white walls. No windows, no bed, just one rock-hard chair. They made me sit there, staring at the wall all day long. The first day, I just cried. But by the 4th day, I couldn't make a single sound anymore. I just sat there, staring at that stark white wall. Staring so long, that it felt like I finally understood everything. Later, the doctor told me, that was called learned helplessness. And after that, she started teaching me other things. Teaching me how to observe, how to control my emotions, how to replace feelings with pure logic. She told me, only when I mastered all of this, could I finally walk out of there, so that no one could ever hurt me again. And I really did master it. The bus pulled up to the stop. I got off and started walking back. Just as I reached the gates of the Joe family villa. It's already dark out. The front door is open. It's brightly lit inside. I can faintly hear talking and laughing. We must have guests. I walk inside. The living room is completely full of people. All extended relatives of the Joe family. And a few business friends. They're sitting together in a circle. Drinking tea, eating snacks. Chatting and laughing. But the moment they see me walk in, the living room instantly falls dead silent. Everyone turns to stare at me in unison. Those looks, how should I put it? It's like they're looking at a monkey in a zoo, full of curiosity, and a bit of morbid fascination. Is that the one who was locked away for 3 years? A distant aunt lowers her voice, whispering into the ear of the person next to her. Keep it down. I heard people who come out of that kind of place aren't quite right in the head. Ming is still the sensible one. Look at how well he manages the company. A biological child just can't compare to the one raised by your side. These words drift right into my ears, word for word. I don't stop walking, going straight to the water dispenser. I grab a clean glass, fill it with warm water, and slowly take a sip. The doctor said, other people's judgments are their subjective projections, not your objective reality. I don't care, but I notice, Joe Ming isn't here. Where did he go? Just as I'm thinking this, there's the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Joe Ming comes down. He's changed into a brand new outfit. A light blue casual suit, his hair styled to absolute perfection. Wearing that perfect smile on his face. When he sees me, his eyes light up and he walks right over holding a glass of champagne. Brother, you're back. He smiles. His voice isn't too loud or too soft. Just loud enough for everyone around to hear. Brother, why didn't you tell anyone you were going out today? I was so worried about you. He walks right up to me, looking me up and down. Brother, your clothes are way too old. I'll take you out to buy some new ones later. People from our Joe family. Going out dressed like this, it just makes us a laughingstock. He sounds so incredibly considerate. So very sensible. The relatives around us nod in agreement, praising Joe Ming for being so generous and kind. And so good to his older brother. I don't say a word. I just drink my water. Joe Ming probably feels that isn't quite enough. So he takes another step closer, lowering his voice so only I can hear. Brother, look, even if you're back, nobody here welcomes you. You're just a piece of trash nobody wants. After saying this, he instantly takes a half step back, replacing his expression with a look of pure terror, and exaggeratedly raises his hands. Brother, please don't get worked up. I was just kindly reminding you. The relatives gasp in shock. Someone had already started yelling for security. Zhou Qingyue stepped out from the crowd. Her face was livid. Zhou Ting, what kind of fit are you throwing now? Do you have any idea what occasion it is today? She didn't even bother asking what had happened. She just pinned the blame straight on me. Zhou Ming hid behind Zhou Qingyue, his shoulders trembling. He looked like a frightened rabbit. Sis, please don't blame him. He just got out of that kind of place. It's totally normal for him to be emotionally unstable. I'm okay, as long as he doesn't hit me. He was hinting to everyone that I had violent tendencies, that I was some kind of dangerous psycho. I stared at his face, which was practically dripping with fake innocence. Then I looked at Zhou Qingyu's furious glare. Finally, my gaze swept over our parents standing nearby. They were scowling too, their eyes full of deep defensiveness. These were my family members. I set my glass down on the table. The bottom of the glass hit the wood, making a sharp, quiet clink. I took a step forward, stopping right in front of Zhou Ming. He probably thought I would react just like I did 3 years ago. Breaking down, screaming, and desperately explaining that I never wanted to hit anyone. A fleeting look of smug satisfaction flashed in his eyes, but I didn't. I raised my hand and with absolute, chilling calmness, I slapped him hard across the face. The sharp crack sounded like a thunderbolt, exploding in the living room. The impact knocked Zhou Ming's head to the side. He stumbled back 2 steps and the champagne glass in his hand crashed to the floor. Shattering into tiny pieces, the entire room fell dead silent. Everyone was absolutely stunned. Even Zhou Qingyue stood there frozen, as if she couldn't process that I had actually dared to strike him. Zhou Ming clutched his bright red cheek. He stared at me in pure disbelief as tears instantly came pouring down his face. "Brother, why did you hit me?" My mother let out a piercing scream and rushed over to wrap her arms around Zhou Ming. She shoved me violently. "Are you out of your mind? How dare you strike Ming?" The shove made me stumble back 2 steps before I steadied myself. Facing the accusations of an entire room, I simply adjusted my shirt cuffs. My tone remained so perfectly flat that it was terrifying. The doctors said that slander is a bad behavior, and I am responsible for stopping bad behaviors. I stared blankly at Zhou Ming, without a single trace of emotion in my eyes. "Just now, you verbally attacked me, and attempted to use body language to create the false impression that I was threatening you. That was slander against me. Right and wrong are not based on feelings. They are based on behavioral evidence. Whoever crosses the boundary first must bear the consequences." That slap was the settlement. My words plunged the living room into an even more eerie silence. They stared at me as if they were looking at a soulless machine. Zhou Qingyue finally snapped out of her daze, shaking uncontrollably with rage. "Zhou Ting, not only are you completely unrepentant, but now you've resorted to violence, haven't you? It seems 3 years in that correctional facility still hasn't taught you how to act like a human being." She screamed harshly, whipping her head around to shout at the butler. "Go get some rope and tie him up. Call security. Call the police." The atmosphere in the grand hall plummeted to a freezing point. Zhou Qingyu's voice was still echoing. The butler had already brought 2 security guards over to surround me. My mom was holding Zhou Ming tightly, like she was protecting a baby threatened by a demon. Her eyes were filled with absolute disgust for me. My dad, Zhou Jinan, stepped out from the crowd. His voice was heavy, carrying an unquestionable authority. "Zhou Ting, you've disappointed me so much." He looked at me, his eyes full of disappointment and anger. 3 years ago, when you stole money and lied, we sent you away to be educated. Because we wanted to save you. But now, you actually dare to commit violence in public. Do you even care about this family at all? I looked at him. He was still the same as always, loving to stand on the moral high ground and dictate the nature of everything. He didn't even ask what Zhou Ming had said to me. He only looked at the result, that I made a move. The 2 security guards reached out to grab my shoulders. I shifted my body slightly, dodging their hands. The doctor said, "When the environment loses order, the only sense of security comes from rules." I ignored the guards, and took my phone out of my pocket instead. I tapped the screen a few times, my movements so steady there wasn't a hint of trembling. Zhou Qingyue sneered. "What, trying to record again? What's the point of recording in your own home, Zhou Ting? You are not walking out of this door today." I looked up and gave her a glance. And then, right in front of everyone, I dialed 3 numbers. 110. The hall instantly went completely silent. My dad's face turned so dark it looked like it could drip ink. He clearly didn't expect me to take the initiative to call the cops. The call connected very quickly. "Hello, I'd like to report an incident. Someone at the Zhou family villa is illegally restricting my personal freedom and attempting physical violence against me." My voice was calm, my articulation clear, as I accurately reported the home address. "There are multiple eyewitnesses on the scene. The evidence has already been backed up to the cloud. Please dispatch officers as soon as possible." I hung up the phone. I put my phone back into my pocket. Zhou Qingyue laughed out of pure fury. "You called the cops? Zhou Ting, you actually dared to call the police to arrest your own biological parents and sister?" "You're mistaken, President Zhou." I corrected her. "The police aren't here to arrest family. They're here to deal with lawbreakers." She tried to say something, but was stopped by my dad. My dad stared at me, his eyes revealing a hint of scrutiny for the first time. He's a man who values his reputation above all else. If the police actually showed up, tomorrow's headline would be about the Zhou family's biological child calling the cops for help on their very first day back. The Zhou family's stock prices would immediately nosedive. "Ting Ting, put the phone down. We can talk about this." My mom started to soften her tone, trying to use that sickening, fake motherly love to calm things down. "We're only doing this for your own good. As long as you apologize to Xiao Ming, this whole thing will be over." The doctor said, "Cheap tears and delayed comfort are all nothing but noise." I cut her off. I raised my wrist to look at my watch. "The police will be here in 5 minutes. Mr. Zhou, you have exactly 5 minutes to think about this. Either tell your guards to back off, or wait for the cops to force them out." The guards exchanged nervous glances, not daring to move a muscle. They didn't want a lawsuit on their hands either. Zhou Ming hid in my mother's arms, his face deathly pale. He'd probably never seen a scene like this before. In the past, all he had to do was squeeze out a couple of tears, and I'd be thrown into solitary confinement, completely starved, or dragged back to that absolute nightmare of a place. But now, my tears have completely run dry. Even my soul died in that reform center. 5 minutes later, sirens started wailing in the courtyard. Flashing red and blue lights reflected off the living room's French windows, glaringly bright. My third sister, Zhou Yiwi, scrambled in an absolute panic to open the door. The officers walked in, their expressions dead serious. "Who called the cops?" I raised my hand, stepping right through the crowd to the front. I did, officer. Here is my ID. I handed over the replacement card I had just gotten issued. Along with it, I handed over my phone. This is an audio recording of my eldest sister, Miss Jo Qingyue, trying to impose a restriction order on me just moments ago. And here is video proof of these security guards attempting to illegally detain me. Jo Qingyue's face instantly froze. Even my second sister, Jo Rushao, the hotshot lawyer who claimed she had never lost a single case, stood there completely stunned. The officer finished listening to the recording, his brow furrowing deeply. He shot a hard look at my father. Mr. Zhou, in our country, restricting another person's personal freedom is a strict violation of the law. Even if he's your own flesh and blood, once he is of legal age, he is an independent adult. My father took a sharp, deep breath, desperately trying to keep his composure. Officer, this is merely a family dispute. My son just got back home, and his emotions are a bit unstable. The recordings show that he is perfectly stable. The officer snapped his notepad shut, his tone strictly business. On the contrary, it's all of you, ganging up and trapping the victim. Mr. Zhou, if you don't want to take a trip down to the station for questioning, dismiss your guards immediately. And guarantee that you will never infringe on Mr. Zhou Ting's legal rights again. The officer turned to me. Mr. Zhou Ting, if you need a protective order or assistance moving out of this house, we are fully prepared to escort you. I stared down at that entire family. My father's livid face, Jo Qingyue's seething rage, my mother's utter disbelief, Zhou Ming's pathetic panic, and the twisted, conflicted looks on my second and third sisters' faces. That won't be necessary, officer. I gave a perfectly polite bow. As long as they understand that I am no longer governed by their twisted family rules, I only answer to the law now. After seeing the police out, the living room fell into a dead silence. The relatives had already found excuses to slip away. The only ones left were the core members of the Zhou family. My father stood in the shadows, his eyes burning a hole right through me, looking like he wanted to rip me apart. What the hell did you actually learn in there? He demanded in an icy voice. I paused my steps on the stairs, my hand gripping the freezing banister. I learned how to deal with animals. I turned around and stared down at them. The doctor used to say, when a person is stripped of all their dignity, they either die in the mud or they learn to use the system to beat the system. Mr. Zhou, Mrs. Zhou, Director Zhou, I called them out, one by one. My voice was dead flat. Welcome to my world. With that, I went back to the guest room and quietly locked the door. Observation log, Day 4. External system intervention, successful. The noise was forcefully cut off. The Zhou family is finally starting to feel afraid. The doctor always said, fear is the only cure to wake them up. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring out into the pitch-black night. It was completely quiet downstairs now. All that screaming and yelling had stopped. The Zhou family must have scattered and gone back to their rooms, left alone to process what happened tonight. I wonder what's going through their heads right now. Are they cursing me for being an ungrateful wretch? Or are they regretting their decision to lock me up back then? Or maybe they aren't thinking anything at all. People like them never reflect on their own mistakes. They just blame everyone else. I lay down and stared at the ceiling. The ceiling was pure white, exactly like the one in the solitary confinement cell at the reform camp. Back when I was locked up in there, I used to lie just like this all the time, staring at the ceiling, for entire days. Sometimes I would wonder, what if I just died in there? Would they even be sad? Would my mother cry? Would my father regret it? Would my sisters ever think of me? But then I realized the truth. No, they wouldn't. They would just feel relieved. Relieved that they finally didn't have to worry about the son who ruined their perfect reputation. So I couldn't die. I had to stay alive. I had to make it out alive, just to stand right in front of them. I wanted them to see the very son they destroyed with their own hands. And how he came crawling back alive. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. It was a message from that number. Log what happened tonight. I typed back. Already logged. The reply came. Good. Keep observing. I put the phone down and closed my eyes. The doctor was right. I am her masterpiece. She molded me with her own hands. Without her, the current me wouldn't exist. But sometimes I do wonder, if I hadn't met her back then, what would I be like today? I'd probably be dead. Dead in that room with 4 white walls. Dead from the endless, day after day electroshocks and solitary confinement. Dead from that endless, suffocating despair. So, I really should thank her. Her methods were terrifying, but she kept me alive. And that was enough. Observation log, Day 4, concluded. Noise levels, high. Emotional fluctuations, 0. The morning after the police left, the butler knocked on my door. He told me Mr. Zhou and Director Zhou were waiting for me in the study. I put on that faded gray shirt, the one washed almost white, buttoning it tight, all the way to the very top. As I walked downstairs, the living room was dead silent. My mom was sitting on the sofa, her eyes swollen like peaches. When she saw me come downstairs, her lips moved. She wanted to say something, but couldn't get the words out. I just ignored her and walked straight toward the study. The door was left open. My dad was sitting behind his massive rosewood desk, while Jo Qingyue stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. This was the true center of power in the Zhou family. In the past, the moment I stepped into this room, my palms would start sweating from sheer panic. I used to walk on eggshells around them, terrified that one wrong word would set them off. Terrified they'd tell me I wasn't as well behaved as Zhou Ming. But now, I only noticed that the soundproofing in here was actually pretty good. I walked in, pulled out the chair across from the desk, and sat down. My movements were slow and quiet, not making a single sound against the floor. My dad stared at me, his eyebrows tightly knit. He was a man who cared deeply about his public image, completely used to being in control of everything. But last night, the cops showing up finally made him realize that his old family rules didn't work on me anymore. So, he switched to treating this like a business negotiation. Zhou Qingyue walked over, and slammed a thick stack of documents right in front of me. The pages spilled out, and the top one read, Non-Disclosure Agreement and Renunciation of Inheritance Rights. Take a look. Zhou Qingyue's voice was cold, dripping with her usual arrogant, condescending tone. As long as you sign these papers, promise to keep your mouth shut to the public. And swear you will never lay a hand on Zhou Ming again. You'll get 500,000 from the family trust fund every single month for living expenses. You can sit back, relax, and keep playing the role of the spoiled young master of the Zhou family. But only if you start behaving. I looked down at the stack of papers. The fine print was packed with endless clauses, all completely restricting me. I couldn't leak a word about being sent to that reform school 3 years ago. I couldn't damage the reputation of the Zhou family, or Zhou Ming. I had to voluntarily give up all my shares and inheritance rights to the Zhou group. The penalty for breaking it was an astronomical sum. My dad picked up his teacup and took a slow sip. Ting ting, it's not that there's no place for you in this family, but that stunt you pulled last night was a complete disgrace. Your older sister and I have already talked it over. As long as you sign this, we'll let bygones be bygones. We're only doing this for your own good, to keep you from going down the wrong path again. We're really just looking out for you. That line sure comes in handy for them. 3 years ago, using those exact same words, they shoved me into a car and locked me away in a dark, godforsaken hellhole. And now, they were using that line again, trying to buy out my voice for the rest of my miserable life. I didn't get angry. I didn't even feel the slightest bit of heartbreak. I simply picked up a pen from the desk and popped the cap off. Seeing how cooperative I was being, Zhou Qingyue flashed a cold, mocking smirk. Well, at least you're not completely stupid. If I'd known we could just throw money at the problem, things wouldn't have gotten so ugly 3 years ago. I'll sign it, I said quietly. My voice was completely flat, without a single trace of emotion. But the rights and obligations in this contract are completely one-sided. I need to add an extra clause. My dad slowly put down his teacup, his eyes turning razor sharp. What exactly do you want to add? You think the money isn't enough? Zhou Qingyue let out a harsh scoff, but I just shook my head. Gripping the pen, I went to the blank space at the bottom of the page and slowly, deliberately, wrote down a single line. The handwriting was as neat as a printed font. Once I finished writing, I slid the document over, pushing it right in front of them. I agreed to give up my inheritance rights. I agreed to keep my mouth shut. But, in exchange, I'm keeping my right to sue for the illegal imprisonment and psychological trauma from 3 years ago. The study instantly fell dead silent. My dad's face completely dropped. Zhou Qingyue slammed her hand on the desk, pointing right at my face and screaming. Zhou Ting, are you insane? The right to sue? You want to take us to court? I just stared at her clenched jaw. My doctor told me that right and wrong aren't about feelings. They're about concrete evidence. You want to use a contract to control what I do now. So I'm going to use the law to make you pay for what you did in the past. It's called an equal exchange. My dad shot up from his chair. I am your biological father. Your older sister is your own flesh and blood. And now you want to settle the score with us? Do you have no conscience at all? His voice was so loud. It literally rattled the lid of his teacup. But I just sat there in my chair, without even blinking an eye. Yes, I am going to settle the score with you. I looked dead into my dad's eyes. Because my doctor said, loving yourself is the golden rule. I'm never backing down for anyone's tears or family ties ever again. Stop throwing a tantrum. Zhou Qingyue was trembling with rage. Who the hell do you think you are? What proof do you even have to sue us? Those exact words, stop throwing a tantrum, triggered a system command deep inside my brain. I wasn't even angry. Actually, I felt my body temperature dropping like a stone. I stood up and casually adjusted my shirt cuffs. My voice was more polite than it had ever been. CEO Zhou, do you want me to be reasonable? Or do you just expect me to sit here and take your abuse? What makes you think that I even need you to believe me anymore? I looked into their shocked, alienated eyes, and gently set the pen down on the desk. I'm not explaining myself. Explanations are only for people who actually care. Since we can't agree on these terms, then the deal is off. I'm not signing a damn thing. What you owe me isn't an apology, and it isn't money either. It's consequences. I turned around and headed for the door. Behind me, my dad and Zhou Qingyue were burning holes into my back with their stares. For the very first time, they finally realized I was no longer the pathetic son who would cry and beg for mercy over a single harsh word. I had become a cold machine running strictly on its programming. A monster that they could no longer control. I yanked the study door open. Right outside, Zhou Ming was standing in the hallway. He was holding a plate of sliced fruit, and his face was as pale as a ghost. He had clearly been eavesdropping at the door for a while. The second he saw me walk out, he reflexively stumbled a huge step backward. His hand shook, and a silver fork clattered right onto the carpet. He just stared at me, his eyes completely stripped of that arrogant, mocking look and two-faced innocent act from yesterday. Now, there was nothing but raw, unfiltered panic. In the past, all he had to do was fake sick and shed a few tears to set off my anger, making me lose my mind completely. And then, he would use our family against me, trampling me into the dirt time and time again. But right now, he realized, I'm done begging for love. I'm done fighting for attention. I don't even care about the Zhou family's inheritance, or their money. You can't guilt-trip a madman who has absolutely nothing left to lose. I stopped in my tracks, and glanced at the fork dropped on the floor. Mr. Zhou, I called out to him. Zhou Ming trembled all over. Brother, you can keep putting on an act, I said, leaning in close. My voice was dead calm as I told him, but I highly suggest that next time you pull a stunt like this, you do a better job of wiping away the evidence. Because the second I catch you, I'll send you straight to that place, and make you relive my 3 years of hell. Zhou Ming's legs gave out. He pinned his back hard against the wall, completely unable to stammer out a single excuse. I stood up straight, stepped around him, and headed back to my room. I pulled out my old phone, and opened the notes app. Observation log, day 5. Negotiations have completely broken down. Refused to sign the unfair agreement. Test results. They want an obedient son, while all I want is a fair trial. Addendum. The target, Zhou Ming, is showing signs of extreme terror. The doctor said this is a positive sign. Back in my room, I stood by the window, staring at the garden below. Zhou Ming was still frozen in the hallway. I could hear his heavy, ragged breathing. He was genuinely terrified. After all these years, he'd never seen me push back like this. The old me was just a tamed dog. No matter how much I suffered, I never dared to bite back. But the person I am now has already lived through his own death. And someone who's perished once fears absolutely nothing. My mind suddenly flashed back to my days in the correction center. I had just been locked up in there. I didn't know the rules yet, and I was punished every single day. Thrown into solitary confinement daily. There was one time, I was given shock treatments until I completely blacked out. When I finally came to, I was lying on the freezing floor, my mouth filled with blood. I had bitten right through my tongue. And sitting right beside me was a person, wearing a crisp white lab coat and gold-rimmed glasses. Her face was completely emotionless. You're awake, she stated. I just stared at her, completely unable to speak. My name is Wei Yuru. I'm the doctor here, she said. From this day on, you answer to me. I actually thought she was there to save me. It was only later that I realized. She was there to completely break and rebuild me. She told me I was far too weak, too easily hurt, and way too easy to be manipulated. She said I needed to find a completely new way to survive. How, you ask? She drilled her rules into my head, one by one. Never trust anyone. Only trust the rules. Only trust the evidence. Only trust yourself. In the very beginning, I just couldn't do it. I cried constantly. I was so desperately homesick. I kept clinging to the hope that one day, my parents would come and take me home. Eventually, she just stopped teaching me altogether. She left me to figure it out for myself. She placed a mirror right in the middle of the solitary cell, and forced me to stare at my own reflection. For an entire day, 2 days, 3 days, I looked at myself in the mirror, going from crying to feeling absolutely nothing. From breaking down, to dead calm. And then, it finally hit me. Mom and Dad weren't coming. No one was coming to save me. The only one who could save me was me. After that, everything about me changed. No more crying, no more begging. The day I got out, I swore I'd make every single one of them taste the exact same suffering I went through. And now, I'm out. Observation log, day 5 concluded. Target's fear level has increased. 0 emotional fluctuations. Early the next morning, I decided to head out. Not for a walk, but to the company. Zhou Group headquarters. Those twin towers are the landmarks of this city. 3 years ago, I was an intern there. Back then, I thought that as long as I worked hard enough, I could close the gap between me and Zhou Ming, in our parents' eyes. Instead, I was handcuffed in front of everyone, shoved into a car, and locked away in a correction center. Today, I wanted to go back. Not for anything else. I just wanted to get back the personal stuff I left there. The doctor said that taking back what belongs to you is a crucial part of rebuilding your personal boundaries. I didn't tell a soul. I just took a cab there myself. When I got out of the car, the sun was glaringly bright. Carrying my faded canvas bag, I walked toward the main entrance. Stop right there. The security guard blocked my way. He looked me up and down, staring at my old shirt, with undisguised disgust in his eyes. Salesman, go to the back door. This is the main entrance. I stopped in my tracks and looked at his name tag. I'm not here to sell anything. My voice was very quiet, very steady. I'm looking for Zhou Qingyue. The guard acted like he just heard a massive joke. He scoffed. Looking for Boss Joe? Who the hell are you? Do you have an appointment? No, I answered honestly, but I have this. I pulled a document out of my bag. It was a copy of the resignation agreement I signed 3 years ago. It even had the official seal of the Joe Group on it. I just want to get my personal belongings from the office. Get out of here. Who are you trying to fool with that piece of trash? The guard impatiently shoved me. He pushed hard. My overly thin frame swayed. Stumbling back a couple of steps, passing employees started gathering around in 2s and 3s, pointing and whispering, "Wait, isn't that the biological son of the Joe family? Keep your voice down." I heard he went crazy and was locked up for a few years. Young Master Joe Ming just sent out a memo this morning, saying his brother has been emotionally unstable lately. He asked us to bear with him if we bumped into him at work. Oh, so that's what's going on. Joe Ming had already dug my grave before I even got here. He used a sickeningly gentle method to brand me as a complete lunatic in everyone's minds. I looked at the security guard, and then at the faces of the crowd watching the show. Their eyes held pity and mockery. The only thing completely missing was respect. "Mr. Joe, please leave immediately." The security guard stepped forward again, trying to forcefully drag me toward the curb. Boss Joe made it clear, someone as mentally unstable as you is strictly forbidden near the company lobby. His hand clamped down hard on my arm. It really hurt, but I didn't struggle. My doctor once told me, when someone uses unlawful physical force against you, the best counterattack isn't violence, it's transparency. I freed one hand, pulled out my old phone, and started a live stream. I immediately pointed the camera right at the massive Joe Group logo, and then at the security guard's arrogant face. "Everyone," I spoke to the camera, my voice as calm as a news anchor. "I am Joe Ting, the biological son of the Joe family, who has been missing for 3 years. Today, I came back to the Joe Group, simply to retrieve my personal belongings. But I was stopped by security. The reason? Boss Joe's orders, claiming I am mentally unstable." The security guard completely froze. The crowd around us erupted into whispers. The viewer count in the live stream was skyrocketing. The messy drama of the wealthy Joe family had always been a hot topic in the city. "Now, I'd like to ask the security guard." I aimed the camera right at him, my eyes dead, unblinking. "What is your legal basis for deciding I'm mentally unstable? Is it a professional psychiatric evaluation? Or just a single, verbal claim from Boss Joe?" The guard was totally speechless. He lunged forward, trying to snatch my phone. "Put the damn phone down. Stop filming." I quickly sidestepped, easily dodging his grab. I took the chance to hold my ID card up to the camera. "If I really am crazy, then please show me the restraining order. If you don't have one, then what you're doing right now is legally considered assault and violently obstructing a citizen from exercising their lawful rights. Are you out of your mind?" The guard yelled, completely humiliated and furious. "Yes, you're the one who said I'm sick," I replied smoothly. My gaze swept over every single person in the crowd. "So, I guess I'll just follow the doctor's orders. Since you've all decided I'm a madman, then anything a madman does can be forgiven. Right?" I took a deliberate step forward, and slammed my shoulder hard into his chest. My bones are solid. The impact made him wince in pain, but surprisingly, he didn't dare fight back. Why? Because the camera was pointed right at him, and because there were already over 10,000 people watching the stream. "Joe Ting, have you thrown enough of a tantrum?" A sharp, commanding woman's voice echoed from the lobby. Zhou Qingyue, clicking her red-bottomed heels, strode out aggressively, a whole pack of executives trailing behind her. She glared at the growing crowd and then at my phone. Her face turned absolutely livid. "Turn it off. Shut off that live stream right now." She stormed right up to my face, her voice dropping into a harsh, commanding growl. I just stared at her flawless makeup. "Boss Joe, I purposely didn't call her sister. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm just settling our accounts. 3 years ago, you stood right here, publicly announced that I stole 100 million, and sent me away. And now, 3 years later, you stand here and publicly announce that I'm mentally ill." As she blocked my way, I turned the camera right into her face. My tone was dead calm, without a single tremor. "You destroyed my reputation, and now you want to take away my freedom of movement? What on earth makes you think that I'd ever listen to you again?" Zhou Qingyue was trembling all over with rage. She raised her hand, looking like she wanted to slap me across the face. I didn't flinch. I just stared straight into the lens. The doctor said, "If you really want me gone, your best bet is to kill me. But if you can't kill me, then you'd better learn to play by my rules." Zhou Qingyue's hand froze in midair. She had just seen the live chat blowing up with CEO Joe bullying her own brother. "The Joe family is disgusting." Seeing those comments, it finally dawned on her that the Joe Ting she used to walk all over had already died in that reform school. "Joe Ting, you are such a disappointment." She pulled her hand back, her voice icy cold. "Pulling a stunt like this, aside from dragging the family name through the mud, what exactly do you get out of it?" I shot back, letting out a soft chuckle. "I'm not looking to get anything. I just want you all to suffer. Tell me, CEO Joe, do you want me to be reasonable? Or do you just want me to sit back and take the abuse? Jo Qingyue clenched her jaw, glaring at me intensely, but she couldn't squeeze out a single word. Just then, a black Bentley pulled up to the curb. My second sister, Jo Rushao, the senior partner lawyer in her impeccably tailored suit, stepped out of the car. She took in the scene, her eyes filled with clinical, professional scrutiny. Ting ting, that's enough. She walked over, her tone carrying a surprisingly gentle, coaxing edge. I'm a lawyer, but I'm also your sister. Your current mental state really isn't fit for the public eye right now. Come with me, let's go to the hospital and get you a proper psych eval, okay? She was trying to weaponize her professional jargon to diagnose me as crazy. I looked at her, and shut off the live stream, because I knew, the words I was about to say weren't meant for the public. Second sister, I addressed her with cold politeness. Since you're acting as a lawyer right now, please show me your power of attorney. If you can't produce one, then back off. Otherwise, what you owe me is going to be a lot more than just an apology. As my second sister, Jo Rushao, stood before me, the air around us seemed to freeze. She was as elegant as ever, not a single wrinkle on her crisp suit. The way she looked at me was full of condescending pity. I knew that look all too well. 3 years ago, she had looked at me the exact same way while I was pinned to the floor, struggling. She had stood there, clinically analyzing my criminal psychology word by word. Ting ting, if you're done throwing your tantrum, get in the car. Her voice was soft, like she was coaxing a disobedient child. Your emotional volatility is way beyond the normal spectrum right now. You need professional evaluation and treatment. She turned her head, shooting Jo Qingyue a reassuring glance, before turning back to me. As your family, we have a responsibility to monitor your health. Just do as you're told. Don't make this uglier than it has to be. Monitor. That word spilling from her mouth carried the rotten stench of medicine. I stared at the gold-rimmed glasses resting on the bridge of her nose. Behind those lenses, her eyes held absolutely no sisterly affection, only cold calculation. She wanted to use her professional status to lock me back inside a cage for the mentally ill. My doctor once told me, when someone tries to define you with fake authority, you shouldn't just argue back. You have to expose them. I took a small step back, putting a polite, social distance between us. Second sister, I called out to her softly, my tone completely flat, without a single ripple of emotion. In what capacity are you speaking to me right now? Second sister froze for a second. She frowned slightly. I am your sister, of course. If you're my sister, then drop the professional jargon. I stared right at her jawline, my words barely a whisper. But if you're here as a lawyer, then show me your credentials and the official power of attorney from President Joe. Otherwise, this little diagnosis you're giving me right now not only lacks procedural basis, but it also counts as defamation. Second sister's face stiffened. She clearly didn't expect me to use her own professional logic to shut her up. Ting ting, do you really have to be so hostile? We're only doing this for your own good. For my own good? I cut her off, the corners of my mouth twitching into the slightest smirk. But there was zero joy in it. 3 years ago, under the excuse of doing it for my own good, you submitted a report of my psychological abnormalities to the court. You crushed my last ray of hope. And now, you want to use that exact same excuse to lock me up in another hospital ward? I took a step closer to her, staring intensely into her glasses. Are you my doctor, or are you just their tool? Second sister instinctively avoided my gaze. Her voice dropped low. Jo Ting, you are being way too paranoid. This is a textbook case of persecution complex. Every single time you fight back like this, you're only proving that you really do need treatment. Proving? I asked back. My doctor said that right and wrong aren't about feelings, they are about behavioral evidence. I pulled out my phone and tapped open a copy of a legal document that I had downloaded while waiting earlier. According to the mental health law, forcing medical treatment against someone's will is highly illegal. Second sister, you're a big shot lawyer. You should know this way better than I do. If you try to take me away by force today, I will use this as evidence and sue to have your license revoked. Second sister's pupils shrank sharply. The thing she cared about most was her perfect professional facade. I caught a flash of humiliated rage in her eyes. You are absolutely hopeless. She finally couldn't keep up that gentle, caring mask anymore. Her voice turned shrill and harsh. Jo Ting, do you really think learning a few legal codes will let you turn the tables? That selfish, despicable nature in your bones will never change. Will never change. Those 3 words were like a long, thin steel needle, piercing directly into my deepest taboo. The look in my eyes instantly turned ice cold. The noise around us seemed to fade away at that moment, leaving behind nothing but a dead, freezing silence. You're right. I looked at her, my tone becoming more polite than ever before, even carrying a hint of formal distance. I really can't change. I can't change the memory of being pushed into the abyss by my own biological sister 3 years ago, and I can't change the instinct of having to scheme every single minute just to survive in that place. I turned around, no longer looking at her face full of shock. Attorney Joe, I suggest you go back and flip through the case files. Look at how that little brother who begged you to believe him 3 years ago died little by little. The current me doesn't need your diagnosis, and I certainly don't need your saving. Second sister stood frozen in place. her hands gripping her briefcase in a death grip, her fingernails turning white from the force. She wanted to retort, she wanted to use even tighter logic to shatter me. But she realized I wasn't playing her game at all. I was like a block of ice with zero temperature. No matter what kind of words she used to heat me up, she would only get an even more piercing chill. "Zhou Ting, stop right there." Zhou Qingyue yelled from behind. I didn't stop walking. The doctor said walking away from sources of noise is an effective way to keep your sanity. I carried my canvas bag and disappeared into the reflection of the Zhou Group's revolving doors. But I didn't leave the Zhou Group building. I turned into the staff elevator on the side of the first floor and pressed the button for the 18th floor. That was the financial center and also the place where I interned 3 years ago. My resignation paperwork was never finished. A private notebook of mine was still left up there. The doctor said taking back what belongs to you is the first step in rebuilding your personal boundaries. When the elevator doors opened, the 18th floor hallway was total chaos. The largest all-glass conference room was packed with people. There were the group's board members, an external audit team, and a few suppliers looking absolutely furious. Zhou Qingyue sat at the head of the table, rubbing her temples. Second sister hadn't followed me up. She was probably still downstairs trying to calm her out-of-control emotions. And Zhou Ming was standing right next to Zhou Qingyue, holding a financial report. Putting on the innocent act of a good boy stepping up in a crisis. I walked to the conference room door and pushed the glass door open. It wasn't a loud noise, but everyone stopped arguing and turned to look at me in unison. When Zhou Qingyue saw me, her face instantly darkened. "What are you doing up here? Are the security guards dead?" Just as she was about to call someone to kick me out, a major supplier across from her slammed his hand hard on the table. "Director Zhou, that is your family drama. We are here today to collect our debts. That missing 100 million from 3 years ago. You still can't give a reasonable explanation for it, meaning the books still don't balance today. We have no way to explain this to our superiors. 100 million. The moment this number came out, the air in the conference room instantly went freezing cold. 3 years ago, it was this exact inexplicably vanished 100 million. That became the death warrant sending me to the correctional facility. At the time, I was interning in the finance department. And so was Zhou Ming. The final results of the investigation showed that my employee ID logged into the system and transferred the money away. And the money went into an overseas shell account. Paid out. I had absolutely no way to clear my name. At this moment, Zhou Ming turned his head and looked at me. A flash of calculation crossed his eyes, before he immediately switched to a look of utter heartbreak. "Director Zhang, you know the situation with this account," Zhou Ming sighed, looking right at the supplier. His voice was just loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Back then, it was my older brother, Zhou Ting. He was young and reckless, and he developed a gambling addiction. He embezzled this money behind our backs. Because of this, my oldest sister had to do the right thing and send him away for rehabilitation. He just got out today. He's still pretty unstable. Please, do it for the Zhou family and give us a few more days. We'll get the books balanced. His little speech was absolutely flawless. Not only did it appease the supplier, but right in front of everyone. He permanently pinned the blame from back then squarely on my shoulders. He even conveniently explained why I showed up here today. Because I was just a disgraced criminal fresh out of lockup. The board members immediately looked at me with absolute disgust. If this were 3 years ago, facing a public accusation like this, my eyes would have welled up instantly. I would have rushed over and grabbed Zhou Ming by the collar, yelling at him for slandering me like that. I would have been babbling incoherently, swearing to everyone that I never even touched the approval system, and then I would have been written off as a compulsive liar and a lunatic. But today, I just stood by the door. I even casually pulled up a chair and sat down quietly. "Mr. Zhou," I stared right at his jawline, my tone incredibly calm. "What makes you think that I would act like I used to? Just crying and begging for justice?" Zhou Ming froze for a second. He was used to me losing my mind. He wasn't used to me being so calm. "Brother, stop making a scene." He forced a bitter smile. "You signed the papers back then, and the security cameras caught you going into the server room. That's all hard proof. You said I was crazy." I completely ignored his little emotional act and cut straight to the point. "So I'll just follow the doctor's orders. My doctor said that any fabricated lie will always leave a gap in the information." I set my faded canvas bag on the table and unzipped it. I pulled out an old USB flash drive and gently slid it to the center of the table. "Since all the auditing experts are here today, let's make a little bet." I looked up, sweeping my gaze across everyone in the room. "I request that we publicly pull up the original payment chain for that 100 million transaction. The authorization chain, along with the back-end system logs." Zhou Qingyue shot up from her seat. "Zhou Ting, how much longer are you going to embarrass yourself? That case was closed a long time ago. That was the Zhou family closing the case for yourselves." I stared right back at her. My voice was soft, but left absolutely no room for debate. "I am not here to explain myself. Explanations are for people who actually care. What I want right now is to settle the score, right here and now." I pointed at the flash drive. 3 years ago, I didn't have the security clearance to look into this. But over the last 3 years, I learned how to read code. Zhou Ming says I was the one who signed off. That's because transferring the funds required 2 digital keys. One belonged to the chief financial officer, and the other belonged to me, the operator. You could hear a pin drop in the conference room. The auditor's professional instincts kicked in. They stared at me. I looked at Zhou Ming. Fine beads of sweat were already starting to form on his forehead. But system logs don't lie. The exact time those funds were transferred was at 2:14 in the morning. If you all just look it up and trace the IP address used to log into those 2 digital keys at the time, you'll find something very interesting. My voice was soft, like I was telling a bedtime story. Both keys were used on the exact same computer, and the router's MAC address linked to that IP didn't belong to the company's server room. It belonged to the private apartment under Zhou Ming's name. The moment I finished speaking, the entire room erupted. Several external auditors immediately opened their laptops, their fingers flying across the keyboards. If what I was saying was true, it meant that someone sitting in their own apartment back then had simultaneously stolen the director's key and mine. To complete the transfer, Zhou Ming's face instantly went dead pale. He stared blankly at the table, his lips starting to tremble. You're talking bullshit. This is slander. Whether it's slander or not, we'll know as soon as they check. I leaned back in my chair, resting my crossed hands on my lap. The doctor used to say, right and wrong isn't about feelings. It's about behavioral evidence. 3 minutes later, the head of the audit team looked up. He looked at Zhou Qingyue with an extremely grave expression. President Zhou, what Mr. Zhou Ting said is true. The archived system logs show that the IP address used back then definitely wasn't from the company. And according to the network provider's records, it was indeed registered to young Master Zhou Ming's apartment. It felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. Every single pair of eyes instantly shifted from me to Zhou Ming. Zhou Ming's legs gave out and he collapsed back into his chair. The victim mask he was so proud of, his flawless little lies, shattered into pieces in the face of cold, hard data. Sis, no, I didn't do it. Someone must have hacked my network. He panicked and grabbed Zhou Qingyue's sleeve, but Zhou Qingyue just froze there. She looked at the data on the auditor's laptop, then looked at Zhou Ming, whose face was dripping with cold sweat. Finally, she looked at me. Her eyes were swirling with absolute shock, and a creeping sense of horror that was finally breaking to the surface. She suddenly realized that 3 years ago she had personally taken her innocent biological younger brother and thrown him into that man-eating hellhole. She had ruined my entire life. The meeting room was dead silent. Zhou Qingyue's body began to tremble slightly. She clenched her jaw so hard and her eyes actually turned red. According to normal human logic, this was the part where she should apologize to me. She should have hugged me, crying her eyes out, telling me how sorry she was. But this was Zhou Qingyue. She was the head of the Zhou family, the kind of person who valued her pride and results more than her own life. Even now, Zhou Qingyue took a deep breath, desperately forcing herself to maintain her high and mighty posture. But her voice betrayed her trembling. Even if you weren't the one who transferred the money, did you really have to make such a scene in front of all these outsiders? Do you have any idea how much damage this will do to the Zhou family's reputation? Even if you were wronged, couldn't you have just talked to me in private? Are you only happy when you've completely humiliated me? She hasn't changed a bit. No matter what the truth is, as long as her interests are threatened, then it's somehow my fault. I listened to her twisting the facts. Without feeling a single ounce of emotion, I stood up, grabbed the flash drive off the table, and shoved it back into my canvas bag. Then, I walked right up to her. She thought I was going to scream or throw a fit, but I just gave her a simple, flat statement. CEO Zhou. My voice was colder than usual, and far more polite. What you owe me isn't an apology. It's consequences, and today is just the beginning. From this moment on, you are dead to me as family. I threw my bag over my shoulder and marched out the door without looking back. I pulled open the glass doors. Behind me, I could hear Zhou Qingyue slumping heavily into her chair, along with the board members' hushed, angry questions. But none of that was my problem anymore. When I reached the elevators, I pulled out my old phone and opened the Notes app. Observation log, Day 8. Information gap shattered. Zhou Ming's foundation of trust is completely destroyed. Target subject, Zhou Qingyue, is experiencing cognitive collapse, but flat out refuses to admit she's wrong. The doctor said, those who refuse to own up to their mistakes will face far worse punishments from the rules. I stared at the screen and typed out the very last line. The punishment begins. By the time I walked out of the corporate building, it was already dark. I stood by the side of the road, watching the endless stream of cars going by, feeling eerily calm. I had been playing that exact role for 3 long years. From the very first day I walked in, I started gathering evidence. I started analyzing every single one of Zhou Ming's slip-ups. I knew he would leave a trail behind, because greedy people can never keep their filthy hands clean. I waited 3 long years for this day, and today I finally got it. But honestly, it wasn't nearly as satisfying as I thought it would be. I thought that when the truth finally came out, I would burst out laughing. I thought I'd be thrilled, that I'd finally feel like a massive weight was lifted off my chest. But now that the moment is actually here, I don't feel a damn thing. It just felt like checking off a box on a to-do list. That's it, my phone buzzed. It was a text from that number. Well done. I stared at those words, and the corners of my mouth twitched into what you could call a smile. Yeah, I did well, but what's next? What am I supposed to do now? I don't know. The doctor said that after the reckoning comes a fresh start, but I can't even begin to imagine what a fresh start even looks like. Whatever, I'm done overthinking it. I just need to get back first. Observation log, day 8 concludes. Task completion, 80%. Emotional fluctuations, 0. By the time I made it back to the Joe family mansion, it was almost pitch black outside. The second I walked through the door, I caught a scent I hadn't smelled in ages. It was sweet and sour mandarin fish. When I was 8 years old, the Joe family had just brought me back. I was dark and scrawny from malnutrition. My mother made this dish for me herself back then. At the time, she told me, "Ting Ting, this is your home now. Mom will make up for everything we owe you." And I believed her. But what I got instead was 3 years of absolute darkness, and countless times of hearing, "You really disappoint me." Ting Ting, you're home. My mother hurried out of the kitchen in her apron, wearing a careful, almost pleading smile on her face. My third sister, Jo Yui, was sitting on the couch, holding several shopping bags from luxury brands. "Ting Ting, come look at this. I bought you some new clothes, and a laptop from your favorite brand." Jo Yui walked over, reaching out to take my arm. I stepped aside to avoid her touch. My movement was slight, but it felt like tearing a massive chasm between us. "Mrs. Joe, Ms. Joe." I looked at them both. My tone was completely flat, not a single hint of emotion. The doctor said, "Sudden unprovoked kindness usually points to a compensatory mindset. Your current behavior is disrupting my routine." My mother's smile froze on her face. Her eyes instantly welled up with tears. "Ting Ting, Mom knows she was wrong. Yue came home from the office this afternoon and told us everything. You really didn't take those $100 million back then." It was Zhao Ming. She choked on her sobs, trying to step forward and hug me. "Mom hasn't had it easy these past few years either. Mom has always wanted to make it up to you. Please, just give Mom a chance, okay?" I just looked at her. Her tears were real. Her guilt seemed real, too. But my heart felt like a frozen lake. Not a single ripple could break the surface. Make it up to me? I walked over to the dining table, staring at the steaming plate of sweet and sour mandarin fish. 3 years ago, when Zhao Ming said I stole the money, you slapped me across the face in front of everyone. You said the Zhou family didn't breed thieves like me. 2 years ago, when I was locked in solitary confinement in there for refusing to admit I was sick, I wrote you a letter begging you to take me away. You wrote back telling me to behave and reform, and to stop embarrassing the family. 1 year ago, I refused to take my medication, so they gave me electroshock therapy. I was in a coma for 3 days. President Zhou came to see me. You had her pass on a message. You said that as long as I was a good, obedient girl, the Zhou family would still have a place for me. With every word I spoke, my mother's face grew paler and paler. By the end, she could barely stand. She gripped the edge of the table, sobbing uncontrollably. "Stop. Please, stop, Ting Ting. I'm begging you, stop." "I will speak," I replied. I pulled out a chair and sat down, methodically taking out my phone. I tapped open a document. The doctor said, "Family ties aren't maintained by blood. They're calculated through actions. This is my ledger for the past 3 years. I slid my phone to the center of the table. 3 years of illegal imprisonment. That's exactly 1,095 days. 34 physical injuries, big and small. Being stripped of my right to an education, my right to a social life, and my very dignity as a human being, all converted into numbers." I looked up at them. My eyes were completely clear, without a single trace of emotion. Yet so freezing cold it would make anyone shiver. "And now, you want to use a single meal, a few pieces of clothing, and one overdue apology, to wipe the slate clean? What on earth makes you think that I still need your love?" Jo Yui stared at those records on the phone. The agony I had documented, word by agonizing word. She slapped a hand over her mouth and bolted for the bathroom. The sound of her violently throwing up echoed out. My mother collapsed onto the floor, gripping my pant leg, sobbing hysterically. "I'm so sorry. Mom never wanted to send you to that place. It was Yue who said they could cure your lying. And Xiao Ming told me he saw you hanging out with delinquents at school. I wasn't picking sides, Ting Ting. Mom just wanted to keep this family stable." Stable. I repeated the word, a self-deprecating smirk tugging at the corner of my mouth. "So for the sake of your stability, you just disposed of me like a toxic asset?" I leaned down, staring right into my mother's eyes. My voice was colder and more polite than it had ever been. "Mrs. Zhou, I want you to admit something to my face. 3 years ago, when you signed that consent form to lock me up in that correction center, didn't you secretly think that as long as I disappeared, the Zhou family could go right back to playing perfect, happy family?" My mother just gaped at me, her face drenched in tears. But she couldn't choke out a single word. The sheer terror in her eyes gave me all the answers I needed. Yes, back then, she really did see me as a stain. A dirty stain ruining her picture-perfect family. I didn't bother explaining myself. Explanations are only for people who actually care. I stood up and grabbed my canvas tote bag. Save this fish for Joe Ming. He probably really needs some warm family bonding right now to calm his nerves. I headed upstairs. My mother was sobbing and screaming my name behind me, but I never looked back. The doctor told me that once you cut off your emotional needs, you cut off the very source of your pain. Back in my room, I sat alone in the dark. The crying downstairs still hadn't stopped. That was just them paying the price for their own guilt. I pulled out my old phone and opened the Notes app. Observation log, day 9. The family debt ledger has been made public. Enemy defenses have completely collapsed. Target, Mrs. Joe, is experiencing extreme guilt. But like the doctor said, this kind of guilt only happens because the ugly truth was finally dragged into the light. If the truth had stayed buried forever, they would still think of me as the bad kid. I stared out the window. The lights in the Joe family garden flickered on, illuminating all those perfectly manicured flowers and shrubs. It was Joe Ming's favorite view. I coldly typed out one final line. Family ties are dead. The reckoning continues. I was just about to go to sleep when my phone suddenly buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. It only contained one short sentence. Mr. Joe, it seems you finally learned how to be a proper auditor. I'm so proud. My grip on the phone slowly tightened. It was her, that doctor in the correction facility, the one who personally crushed me and molded me back into this shape. I stared at that line of text for a long time. To be honest, I didn't know how to reply. She praised me. I should be happy, but I didn't feel a single shred of joy inside. Right at that moment, Joe Ming's scream echoed from downstairs, along with the sound of something heavy crashing to the floor. It seems, my mom's long overdue guilt has finally burned its way to Joe Ming. But I knew Joe Ming wouldn't just sit and wait to die. He would definitely use the upcoming public backlash to make one last, desperate strike. Observation record, day 9 ends. External interference increased. Emotional fluctuation, 0. Early the next morning, Joe Ming's counterattack arrived, faster than I imagined, and way clumsier than I thought. Half an hour ago, several local anonymous forums and short video platforms blew up all at once. The headlines were more horrifying than the last. Rich family's bio son returns as a demon. Violently beats adopted son, drives birth mother insane. In the video, the camera was shaking violently. The footage of my mom slumped on the ground, crying bitterly, was deliberately put in slow motion, paired with a tragic background track. And then, there was Joe Ming's face. He turned his side to the camera, half of his face red and swollen. His eyes were full of terror and grievance. The comment section was having an absolute field day. 3 years in a correction facility isn't enough for this psycho. He should be locked up for life. The Joes really raised a backstabber. So what if he's the biological son? He's rotten to the core, no saving him. My heart breaks for Xiao Ming. He did so much for the Joe family these past 3 years, only for a lunatic to come back and try to steal the fortune. I looked at these words. They were like gusts of meaningless wind, unable to blow into my heart. The doctor said, public opinion is a cheap bullet. It can only hit those who care about their reputation. And I have no reputation. I only have evidence. The room door was violently shoved open. Zhou Qingyue marched in with heavy footsteps, gripping a tablet in her hand. Her face looked absolutely awful, the veins on her forehead literally pulsing. Zhou Ting, is this what you wanted? She slammed the tablet onto my lap, pointing at the trending searches on the screen. The board of directors is blowing up my phone. All our partners are asking if the Zhou family bred a psycho. You ruined the company's image. Now you need to step up, apologize immediately, and stop the bleeding. She glared at me, her tone still carrying that same bossy arrogance. Even though she already knew I was framed 3 years ago, in her eyes, the Zhou family's dignity will always come before my innocence. I picked up the tablet, swiped on it a couple of times casually. President Zhou. I looked up at her, my eyes as dead and calm as stagnant water. Do you want me to be reasonable, or do you want me to keep getting bullied? Zhou Qingyue froze. She didn't expect me to use the exact phrase. She had repeated over the past 2 days to strike back. I'm telling you to apologize. This is for the bigger picture. She roared. The bigger picture is yours. I stood up and placed the tablet on the desk. And I am only in charge of my own reckoning. I pull out that old phone holding the evidence and plug it into the computer. The doctor said, lying is bad, slandering is bad. Since Joe Ming loves using public outrage to ruin lives, then I will teach him what a closed chain of evidence really looks like. My fingers fly across the keyboard. The first video I post is the full, uncut recording of what happened in the living room that night. No editing, no background music. It clearly captures exactly how Joe Ming provoked me, how he verbally humiliated me, how he faked that fall, and that slap of mine. The second file is the police dispatch receipt. It clearly states in black and white. Zhou Ting reported the case. The Zhou family is suspected of illegally restricting personal freedom. The third, and the most lethal one. That is a screenshot of the original backend logs from the company 3 years ago, along with a draft apology email my second sister, Zhou Rushao, just sent me. She is probably trying to salvage the situation. But what she does not know is that every single word she sent will become a blade in my hands. Hit send. I shut down the computer, watching the screen fade to black. You are out of your mind. Zhou Qingyue watches my series of actions, her voice trembling. You are going to completely destroy the Zhou family like this. The one destroying the Zhou family is not me. I grab my bag, ready to head out. I have told you before. You are not family to me anymore. I walk to the door, turning back to give her one last look. President Zhou, I cannot give you the damage control you want. All I can give you are the consequences of messing with me. I walk out of the room. At the top of the stairs, Zhou Ming is standing right there in the shadows. He is staring at his phone, the look on his face shifting from smugness to pure panic and finally into twisted hatred. Zhou Ting, you think you can win like this? He charges at me through gritted teeth, trying to snatch my bag. I do not dodge. I just reach out one hand and perfectly clamp down on his neck. The grip is crushing, but it will not kill him. The doctor said getting physical is bad. I stare dead into his eyes, my tone cold as ice. So let me teach you one more time what the rules are. I shove him brutally against the wall. What you owe me is not something an apology can settle. Now the fire of public opinion is burning you alive. Downstairs, my mother's crying rings out again, but this time, nobody goes to comfort her. Because everyone is too busy staring at their phones, watching the Zhou family's glamorous, golden facade being ripped off, piece by piece, by my own hands. I walk out the main gates of the Zhou family. The night wind is freezing cold. My phone suddenly lights up. It is a message from that unknown number. Nicely done, but not thorough enough. I put my phone away, looking at my own thin silhouette under the streetlights. Indeed, it is not enough. The doctor said, loving yourself is the #1 rule. And the way to love myself is to make everyone who has ever hurt me. They have all lost the right to hurt me. Observation log, day 10. The tide of public opinion has turned. The Zhou family's reputation is in ruins. The target, Zhou Ming, is fully exposed. The Zhou family is trying to use family ties to pressure me. But I have no family left in my heart. The doctor said, this is the only path to freedom. Early the next morning, the atmosphere in the Zhou family villa was unbearably tense. Zhou Qingyue did not go to the office. My second and third sisters were both there. Even my father, who rarely shows his face, was sitting in the head seat of the living room. His face was terrifyingly dark. Ting Ting, come here, my father demanded. His tone carried an absolute, undeniable pressure. I walked to the center of the living room. Mr. Zhou, I addressed him politely. My father's brows knotted in anger. What did you just call me? The doctor said, my forms of address should reflect our current relationship. I looked at him calmly. I do not belong to this family anymore. You bastard. He slammed the table and shot up from his seat. Just then, Zhou Ming's scream echoed from upstairs. He practically tumbled down the stairs, clutching a stack of documents in his hands. His face was deathly pale and his entire body was shaking. Dad, sis, something terrible happened. He slapped the documents onto the table, his fingertips trembling. The company's project department just called me. They said the bidding proposal for the core project was leaked. The rival company got a hold of our base price, and it is exactly the same as ours. Zhou Qingyu's eyes instantly turned razor sharp. What? That is the Zhou Group's most critical 10 billion project this year. And, there is more. Zhou Ming collapsed onto the sofa, covering his face and bawling. My private seal from the safe, and the electronic key my oldest sister authorized for me, they are all gone. All eyes instantly stabbed into me like daggers. Zhou Ting, you were in my room last night. Zhou Ming looked up at me, his eyes full of terror. When I got up in the middle of the night, I saw you walk past my door, holding something in your hands. That is a lie. My third sister, Zhou Yui, blurted out, but her voice clearly lacked confidence. Zhou Qingyue marched right up to me, the last trace of guilt in her eyes vanishing completely. How dare you sell out the company's core secrets? She backed me into a corner, her voice freezing cold. Zhou Ting, will you only be satisfied when you have completely destroyed the Zhou family? My mother stood up too, her eyes filled with despair. Ting Ting, how could you do something like this? That is your father's life's work. Here we go again, this familiar, tired accusation. They do not even need proof. The moment Zhou Ming sheds a tear, I am automatically the bad guy. You said I am sick? I looked at Zhou Qingyue and suddenly let out a laugh. My voice was barely a whisper. Then I will just follow the doctor's orders. I turned my head to look at Zhou Ming, my tone as gentle as a polite greeting. Mr. Zhou, you said you saw me go into your room. Zhou Ming gritted his teeth and nodded. Yes, at exactly 2 a.m. last night. Yes, that is the lifeblood of the company. I nodded, pulling that worn-out, faded old phone out of my canvas bag. The doctor says, lying is bad. Slandering is bad. I pulled up a security video and cast it straight to the living room TV. President Zhou, Mr. Zhou, you should all know, a psycho like me has a habit, which is an extreme distrust of my surroundings. In the footage, the small hallway outside my room was clear as day. At 2 a.m., my bedroom door didn't even budge. But instead, at 3 a.m., A figure in silk pajamas was sneaking out of Zhou Ming's room, holding a black box and shoving it straight into the trash chute at the end of the hall. It was Zhou Ming. A dead silence fell over the living room. Zhou Ming's crying stopped abruptly. He froze on the couch. His face turned from pale to sickly green. You faked this. You psycho, you're trying to frame me. He screamed, lunging at the TV. I didn't stop him, I just clicked play on another audio clip. From it came Zhou Ming's hushed voice. It was a conversation between him and a strange man. I've already taken care of the stuff. I'll send the proposal to your email. Wire the remaining balance to that overseas account. As for Zhou Ting, that scapegoat, she'll absolutely never recover from this. The voice was crystal clear. Even Zhou Ming's heavy breathing from excitement was captured perfectly. My dad's tightly clenched fist slowly loosened. The look in his eyes went from raging anger to a dead, hollow stare. Zhou Qingyue stared at the screen, her body swaying. She barely kept her balance. Second sister Zhou Rushao originally wanted to speak up and defend him. But now, she looked like a duck being choked by the neck, unable to make a single sound. What made you think I would still be like before? Just standing there, crying and screaming about how I was wronged. I looked at Zhou Ming, my gaze no longer darting away, but staring at him like a piece of trash. The doctor says right and wrong isn't about feelings. It's about actions and evidence. Mr. Zhou, when you sent the proposal to our competitors ahead of time, you forgot to get rid of the voice recorder in your study. Oh, right, I put that pen there on purpose. I put my phone away, looking at this whole room of people who had just been slapped black and blue by the truth. President Zhou, Mr. Zhou, Mrs. Zhou, I called them out one by one, my tone more polite than ever before. The truth is right here. Every single word you just used to accuse me now requires a reckoning. My mom suddenly lunged forward, trying to grab my hand. Ting ting, Mom was wrong. Mom was fooled by him. I'll kick him out right now. I dodged her hand. What you owe me isn't an apology. It's facing the consequences. I looked at this mother who always claimed she loved me, but always hid behind me when it really mattered. 3 years ago, when you saw the truth, you chose to sacrifice me for the sake of the family's peace. Well, today, you're finally seeing the truth, and your first instinct is still to cover it up. I glanced at my dad, who was just about to dial the PR department. He still wanted to sweep this whole thing under the rug, to save the Zhou family's face, to protect Zhou Ming, this rotten, yet outwardly flawless adopted son. From this day forward, none of you are family to me anymore. I grabbed my bag and headed for the front door. I've already leaked the proposal anonymously to the bidding regulators. The penalty fees and the ruined reputation. That's exactly what the Zhou family deserves. Zhou Ting, stop right there. My dad roared from behind me. I stopped in my tracks and looked back. Do you want me to be reasonable? Or do you just want me to keep being your punching bag? I dropped the words coldly, and pushed the heavy doors of the Zhou estate open. The wind outside was howling. My phone buzzed. It was a short text message. He slipped up. Now, you can finally cut out this rotting tumor. I'll be waiting for you at the gate. I looked up at the streetlights in the distance. The doctor said loving yourself is rule number 1. And now, I've finally learned how. Observation log, day 11. Framing trap countered. Zhou Ming's true colors fully exposed. The Zhou family attempts to cover up the truth once again, and fails. Family affection system permanently shut down. The doctor said I did a good job. Back in the living room of the Zhou family villa, my dad sat at the head of the sofa, slamming his cane hard against the floor. It made a heavy, dull thud. He was waiting for Zhou Qingyue to bring back the final audit report from the company, and waiting for Zhou Ming's so-called reasonable explanation. I sat across from them in the armchair, holding that faded, old phone in my hand. I lightly traced my fingertip across the screen. The doctor said, when the entire chain of evidence points to a single exit, the truth is no longer a secret. It's a judgment. The front doors violently burst open. Zhou Qingyue stormed in, bringing the freezing cold with her, clutching a crumpled stack of documents. Her eyes were bloodshot, glaring fiercely at Zhou Ming on the other side of the room. Zhou Ming was huddled in my mother's arms, his head buried deep, his shoulders violently shaking as he sobbed. Sis, please, you have to let me explain. I swear I was framed. Zhou Ming's voice choked with tears. It was the same old, well-rehearsed victim act. Zhou Qingyue didn't say a word. She just slammed the stack of papers right into his face. The pages scattered all over the floor. Every single one bore the official stamps of the bank and the police. Framed? Zhou Qingyue's voice was shaking. It was the terrifying breakdown of pure, unadulterated rage. Zhou Ming, that overseas account with 100 million? It was opened under your exact legal name. That anonymous email framing Zhou Ting? The IP address it was sent from, traced right back to the laptop in your study. Tell me, who could possibly get inside your head to frame you? Zhou Ming's sobbing stopped dead. He stared at the evidence on the floor, all the color draining from his face, leaving behind a sickly, deathly pale hue. My mom's eyes went wide, instinctively loosening her grip around him. Ming, is what Qingyue saying true? My mom's voice was shaking violently. My dad shot to his feet. He crossed the room to Zhou Ming in 2 quick strides, raising his hand and delivering a resounding slap. You animal, my dad roared, his chest heaving violently. Our Joe family raised you for 20 years, and you single-handedly destroyed my company just for a little bit of money? And you sent your own brother to a place like that? Joe Ming's head snapped to the side from the blow. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, he dropped the act. He slowly raised his head and wiped the blood from his mouth, letting out a spine-chilling sneer. My brother? Joe Ming glared at my dad, his eyes full of venom. What kind of brother is he? Ever since he came back, did any of you even look at me anymore? I just wanted some security. Is that a crime? My mom stared at her adopted son, who now looked like a complete stranger. She swayed on her feet and collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably. Call the police, my dad said, closing his eyes. His voice sounded 10 years older in an instant. Zhou Qingyue looked at me, her eyes shattered with overwhelming guilt. Ting Ting, I am so sorry. Your big sister was completely blind. She walked toward me, reaching out to take my hand. I pulled my hand back, avoiding her touch entirely. Director Zhou, I stared blankly at her collarbone, my voice perfectly steady, without a single ripple of emotion. My doctor told me that delayed justice is only meant to soothe the conscience of the abuser. Zhou Qingyue's hand froze in midair. I pulled a few pre-printed forms from my bag and laid them flat on the coffee table. Since the truth is finally out in the open, let's settle our accounts one last time. I looked around the room at these weeping people. Mr. Zhou, Mrs. Zhou, Director Zhou. I addressed them by their formal titles, one by one. The embezzlement of the 100 million was Zhou Ming's doing. He will face the legal consequences for that. But the decision to lock me up in that correction center 3 years ago, that was made by all of you. I slid a pen across the table. I refuse to accept a verbal apology. Words are the cheapest thing in the world. I want every single one of you, regarding your decision to illegally strip away my freedom 3 years ago, to write a formal written statement, sign it, and stamp it. Zhou Qingyue stared in disbelief. What do you need this for? My doctor told me that only when a mistake is permanently etched onto paper do people truly feel the pain. I looked at her calmly. You're all willing to admit your adopted son is at fault, but you absolutely refuse to acknowledge your own active role in destroying me back then. Sign it, and once it is signed, only then will the process of paying back what you owe me truly begin. My dad stared at the statement, his hand trembling so badly he couldn't even grip the pen. Ting Ting, does it really have to come to this? We're family. I let out a soft laugh. Then I'll just stick to the doctor's plan. From today onward, I have no family in the Zhou household. I only have debtors. Zhou Qingyue gritted her teeth, the first to sign her name on the paper. Her tears splashed onto the paper, smudging the ink. My parents signed it too. As they wrote, their hands moved so slowly, as if it took every ounce of strength they had left. I gathered the signed statements, and carefully tucked them into a plastic file. Zhou Qingyue looked at me, her voice choked with tears. Ting Ting, we found out the truth, and we've dealt with Zhou Ming. Will you please stay? I picked up my canvas bag and glanced toward the front doors. The night outside was pitch black. The doctor once told me, once a necrotic limb is amputated, it should never be reattached. Without looking back, I walked out of the Zhou family's hall. Behind me, my mother was sobbing in despair, alongside Zhou Qingyue's endless apologies, but my heart felt quiet. Completely, totally quiet. My phone buzzed. An unsaved number sent me a text. Did you get the items? I replied with a single word. Yes. A reply popped up almost instantly. Excellent. Come back, Mr. Zhou. I stared at the text message, a faint flicker of emotion finally showing in my eyes. Observation log, day 12. The truth has finally come to light. Debtor identities confirmed. The Zhou family has finally admitted to their sins, but they have lost my forgiveness forever. The doctor said that only after settling the score can you find true freedom. The Zhou family mansion had never looked as spotless as it did today. Zhou Ming was taken away for investigation. That huge family portrait that used to hang right in the middle of the living room. The one with the 5 of them plus their adopted son. My dad took it down with his own hands. He threw the whole thing, frame and all, into the storage room. For the very first time, the Zhou family reached a bizarre united front. Kick out the adopted son, investigate the past, and make it up to their biological daughter. They had laid out a massive feast in the dining room. Every single dish was made based on my faint memories, from before I was 8, back when I lived in the Zhou household. My dad sat at the head of the table. My mom sat beside him, and my 3 older sisters were lined up next to her. They were all staring at me. Their eyes were filled with this sickening, nauseating affection. Ting Ting, here's your favorite sweet and sour ribs. I made them just for you. My mother placed a piece of meat into my bowl, her hands trembling slightly. I was so foolish before. I let that ungrateful brat blind me from the truth. But from now on, I swear, I will make it all up to you. I stared down at the ribs in my bowl. The doctor once told me, when someone starts using food to apologize, it means they're completely out of meaningful ways to connect. I didn't touch my chopsticks. Mrs. Zhou, I gently pushed the bowl away, my hand as steady as if I were sliding aside a piece of unnecessary paperwork. The doctor said, eating food that expired 3 years ago will give you food poisoning. And care that's 3 years too late is just as toxic. My mother's smile instantly froze. Tears spilled from her eyes. Ting Ting, you still blame me, don't you? I know I was wrong. I really do. Ms. Zhou, I don't blame you. I looked right at her, my voice unnervingly polite. But it felt like there was a thick sheet of bulletproof glass between us. Hating someone takes a lot of energy. And I just didn't have any left. My eldest sister, Zhou Qingyue, suddenly broke the silence. Her voice was hoarse, but it still had that same old, unquestionable bossiness to it. Zhou Ting, now that the truth is out, I'll have the company put out a statement right away to clear your name. I've also had 5% of the Zhou Group's original shares transferred to your name. As compensation, she looked at me, her eyes gave off this vibe of, look at me, I'm already bending over backward for you. So you should just be grateful. I looked right back at my big sister. 3 years ago, right in this very spot, she was the one who slapped me across the face. She called me a thief, said I didn't deserve to carry the Zhou family name. President Zhou. I forced a smile, but my eyes stayed completely dead. Are you asking me to be reasonable? Or are you just expecting me to take the abuse like I always do? Zhou Qingyue froze, the color completely drained from her face. Do you really think 5% of the shares can just buy off 3 years of false imprisonment? Do you honestly think a single PR statement can fix the absolute blankness in my brain every time they shocked me? I pulled a debit card from my bag. I slid it across the dining table. This is the cash value of every single thing you people have given me over the past few days. I wasn't going to explain myself. You only explain things to people you actually care about. Everything you're doing right now, is it really about getting me back? Or is it just to make yourself sleep better at night? Those words acted like a scalpel, slicing right through the hypocritical skin of everyone in the Zhou family. The living room fell dead silent. Smash. My dad slammed his glass down on the table, spilling liquor everywhere. Zhou Ting, what the hell do you want from us? He growled, his eyes red and tearing up. Zhou Ming's life is already ruined. Are you trying to destroy all of us too? We are a family. You can't just sever blood ties. Blood ties. What a convenient excuse. 3 years ago, it was the chain that dragged me into the abyss. And now, it's the hook they want to use to drag me right back into hell. The doctor told me that right and wrong aren't based on feelings. They are based on behavioral evidence. I stood up, smoothing out my faded, worn-out shirt, and the behavioral evidence shows that your actions over the past 3 years were pure abuse, and your actions right now are just you patting yourselves on the back. My third sister, Zhou Yui, suddenly rushed over. She threw her arms open, trying to hug me. She was sobbing uncontrollably. Ting Ting, please, I'm begging you. Don't be so cold to us. I'll take you out painting. I'll take you anywhere you want to go. Let's just start over, okay? I stepped to the side, neatly and precisely dodging her embrace. I kept my hands shoved deep inside my pockets. Third sister. It would be the last time I ever called her that. My voice was as empty as a breeze. You just crossed my physical boundaries. The doctor said, any physical contact against someone's will is considered assault. I stared at her hands, frozen in midair. There wasn't an ounce of hate in my eyes. Just a complete, absolute deadness. What gives you the right to think that I still need any of you to believe me? From this day forward, none of you are family to me anymore. You're just people who owe me a debt. I turned and walked toward the stairs, planting every step firmly on the ground. Behind me, I could hear my mother's heart-wrenching wails, and my father's heavy sighs, along with Zhou Qingyu's helpless roars. But to me, it was all just noise. Once back in my room, I closed the door. I pulled the heavy curtains shut, and took out my old phone. Opening the Notes app, I typed out my final entry for the day. Observation log, day 13. High volumes of emotional noise. Test conclusion. They are trying to erase their guilt by repairing our relationship. Directive. Refuse repair. Terminate relationship. I started packing my things. I didn't have much, just that old canvas bag. The doctor said that loving yourself is the first rule. And in my rules for self-love, there is absolutely no place for the Zhou family. I picked up my bag. I took one last look at this room, reeking of decay. The Zhou family actually thought that by getting rid of Zhou Ming, everything could just go back to the way it was 3 years ago. They didn't realize that the Zhou Ting from 3 years ago, who only wanted to be loved, had already died on that cold, electroshock bed. As I walked down the stairs, the entire Zhou family was still standing completely frozen in the dining room. I didn't say a word to them. Without a single ounce of hesitation, I walked straight ahead and pushed open those magnificent front doors. The night air outside was chilling. Holding onto my faded canvas bag, I stepped out of the Zhou family mansion. This would be the very last time I ever stood here. 3 years ago, I was dragged out. A few days ago, I was invited back. And now, I'm leaving on my own terms. Ting Ting. A heavy thud came from behind me, followed by my mother's agonizing screams. She hadn't even put on her shoes. She just threw herself onto her knees on the hard marble floor, gripping my pant legs for dear life. Mom is begging you, please don't go. I'll give you my life, okay? Everything was my fault. I never should have trusted that ungrateful snake. I'll go die right now. Just please, please stay. I looked down at her perfectly manicured hands, now turning pale at the knuckles from gripping me so tightly. 3 years ago, those exact same hands had used just as much force. Except back then, she was pushing me away, telling me to never come back and humiliate the Joe family again. Mrs. Joe, I addressed her softly. My voice was completely flat. The doctor said that emotional breakdowns are a sign of incompetence. Kneeling won't change the facts. The agreement you signed 3 years ago has been in effect for over 1,000 days now. And for those 1,000 days, my home has not been with the Joe family. She looked up at me, her face drenched in tears. Her eyes were filled with absolute terror and pleading. No, your last name is Joe. You are my own flesh and blood. You belong to the Joe family. Blood is thicker than water. Ting Ting, are you really going to let whatever that doctor said make you abandon us? My third sister, Jo Yui, stood off to the side, trembling violently as she cried. She reached her hand out, wanting to grab my sleeve, but stopped when she remembered what I just said. I yanked my hand back. Ting Ting, please, I'm begging you. Let's go redo the paternity test. We'll invite everyone in the city. We'll announce to the whole world that you are the one and only true heir of the Joe family. We will make it up to you. We'll give you the absolute best. My father had been standing in the shadows, not saying a word. Now, he stepped forward, his voice deep and heavy, carrying a tone of self-righteous comfort. Ting Ting, I know you're throwing a tantrum, and I know you've been wronged. Company shares, luxury cars, mansions, whatever you want. I, Joe Jinan, will give it all to you today. Just stop talking about cutting ties with us. The doors of the Joe family will always be open to you. After all, you have my blood running through your veins. I looked at him. I looked at this father, who still thought money and bloodlines could fix everything. Mr. Joe, I finally spoke, my eyes completely clear, but staring at him like he was a lifeless, dead object. What makes you think I still need you to believe me? What makes you think I would lock myself back in this cage just for your blood-stained money? I took out a brown paper envelope from my bag and placed it on the entryway cabinet. This is the formal notice of severing our relationship and the application to remove myself from your family registry. I've already applied for my own independent household. From now on, my last name is no longer Joe. I am simply just me. My doctor told me, loving yourself is the #1 rule. Staying here would force me to break that rule. My second sister, Jo Rushao, initially tried to use legal jargon to make me stay. But the moment she saw that envelope, this top-tier lawyer, who had never once shown a weakness in court, completely collapsed onto the sofa. You're actually removing yourself from the registry? She stared at me, looking absolutely devastated. Jo Ting, legally speaking, you can't sever a blood tie. By doing this, aside from causing us pain, what's the point? The point? I repeated her question, letting out a soft laugh. I'm not looking for a point. I'm just looking for an end. An end to this 3-year-long torture. My eldest sister, Jo Qingyue, pushed the door open and rushed in. In her hand was an agreement she had just signed, handing over her controlling shares of the company. Her eyes were bloodshot red, her voice so hoarse it was barely recognizable. Jo Ting, look at this. I've already sent Zhou Ming to the police station. I can give the entire company to you, too. Don't you hate me? Just stay here, and you can torture me however you want. Please, just don't go. The total breakdown in her eyes was real. Her regret was real, too. But to me, it felt like the Zhou family's usual self-serving melodrama. CEO Zhou, I looked at her. My words feather light. I don't hate you. Hate is reserved for people you actually care about. I don't care what you think anymore. I gently pulled my hand away from my mother's grip. It was such an incredibly smooth motion, without a single trace of hesitation, as if the very last string keeping her together had finally snapped. My mother passed out cold on the floor. The Zhou family dissolved into absolute chaos. My father's furious roaring, my third sister's wailing, my second sister's sobbing. That was the face the Zhou family had kept up for decades. Their most respectable mask, completely ripped off by me. I walked to the door. The night breeze felt a little cool. It felt nice against my face. I paused for a moment, keeping my back to them. I'm going to meet someone. Don't come looking for me. The doctor said my new life begins today. I stepped out the gate. Behind me, that magnificent, glittering villa looked like a lonely grave under the streetlights. The people living inside were the exact same people who buried me alive 3 years ago. And now, the truth was finally out. But the Zhou Ting who was lost is never coming back. I took out my phone and lit up the screen. There was only one message from an unsaved number. See you at the gate. I took a deep breath and walked toward the silhouette waiting under the streetlight. My footsteps were so light, it felt like I had never been heard at all. At the old bus station on the edge of the city, I was holding my faded canvas bag, standing under the streetlight. The Zhou family hadn't followed me. The severance letter I left them was enough to keep Zhou Rushao busy for at least half a month. And it was enough for my dad to taste the bitter reality of absolute betrayal late into every night. The doctor told me, once the reckoning is over, never look back at the burning house. Because the cries from the flames are only meant to lure you back in to burn with them. A black SUV pulled up silently in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing an intensely calm, almost unnaturally pale face. It was Wei Yuru. She was wearing gold-rimmed glasses, her hair pulled back into a strict bun. When her eyes landed on me, she didn't look like she was greeting an old friend. She looked like she was analyzing a perfect set of experimental data. "You're 3 minutes and 14 seconds late," she said. Her voice sounded like an academic paper, precise and completely ice-cold. "The Zhou family's little farewell performance of affection consumed an unnecessary amount of your lifespan." I opened the door and got into the passenger seat. The AC was blasting. It was almost freezing, but I actually loved the feeling. Compared to the suffocating warmth of the Zhou family, this biting cold made me feel incredibly safe. "They found out the truth," I said, staring at the pitch-black road ahead. My tone was completely flat. Zhou Ming was sent to the detention center. My mom got on her knees and begged me. Zhou Qingyue wanted to hand the entire Zhou group over to me. Zhou Yui cried until her eyes were swollen shut. I paused for a second. I could feel Wei Yuru's gaze lingering on my white knuckles as I gripped my bag. But I don't feel like laughing at all. I don't even feel satisfied. I just feel like it's all so meaningless. Wei Yuru started the car. The engine let out a low rumble. Regret is a luxury for the abusers. It has absolutely nothing to do with the victims. She stared straight ahead, her slender, pale fingers tapping rhythmically against the steering wheel. "Zhou Ting, you need to understand something. The pain they're feeling right now is only because they've lost their control over you, not because they suddenly grew a conscience. If they hadn't sent you to that correction facility, you never would have been able to cut them off completely." I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. 3 years ago, Wei Yuru was suspended due to ethical violations. She wasn't locked away by mistake. She intentionally walked right into that malicious and twisted correctional system to find the perfect observation sample, and I, with nowhere to turn for help, became her only prey. She taught me how to completely shut down my emotions. She taught me how to use cold logic to dissect every single person who wanted to use me. She said, "Loving yourself is the only ticket out of hell." But I knew, the moment I finally learned to love myself, I would forever lose the ability to love anyone else. "The records from these past 3 years, did the Zhou family receive them?" she asked. "They were sent out." I opened my eyes, looking at the city streets flying by the window. "That's the rulebook you wrote, along with the raw data of my physical reactions when I was electrocuted. They'll see it all. They'll look at that data and slowly understand how their own flesh and blood, the son who used to cry tears of joy over a bowl of his mother's soup, exactly how he died piece by piece, right in front of them." Wei Yuru suddenly stopped the car in the middle of the Bay Bridge. She killed the engine and turned her head to look at me. Behind her glasses, her eyes flashed with a paranoid and intense possessiveness. "Zhou Ting, the Zhou family right now, what are they in your eyes?" I stared back into those deeply calculating eyes, and answered softly, "A garbage dump." "Excellent." The corner of her mouth curled up into a tiny smile. That was the only emotion she showed the entire night. "From today onward, you are my masterpiece. You belong entirely to me. The outside world is still full of noise, but in here, the rules never change." She pulled a worn-out correctional facility badge from her pocket. It was mine. She pinned it to my collar with her own hands. Her fingertips brushed against my skin, sending a cold shiver down my spine. "Mr. Zhou, welcome home." I looked out at the glittering, magnificent city in the distance, gazing toward the direction of the Zhou family villa. It was brightly lit over there. My dad would be in his study, staring at that notification letter, unable to sleep all night. My mom would be clutching my old childhood clothes, crying until dawn. Zhou Qingyue now owned the entire corporation, but she could never get back the little brother who used to smile so innocently at her. They won every single game, but they lost the one person who only ever wanted to be loved by them. But I no longer needed love. I pulled my old shirt tighter around me. The button still fastened perfectly all the way up to my neck. The doctor said, "This is what freedom feels like." I closed my eyes, letting the car start back up, driving right into the endless darkness. The car drove for a long time, so long that I almost fell asleep. When I finally opened my eyes again, the car had stopped in front of a rundown little apartment building. "We're here," Wei Yuru said. I pushed the door open and stepped out. It was a very ordinary residential building. Gray exterior walls, a rusty security door, with the hallway lights flickering on and off. "From today onward, you live here." Wei Yuru walked ahead of me, leading me up the stairs. 3rd floor, the unit on the left. She pulled out her keys, opened the door, and stepped aside to let me in. The apartment wasn't big, just a one-bedroom place. It was kept really clean. The furniture was simple, but it had everything I needed. "My clinic is nearby, so let me know if you need anything," she said. I stood right in the middle of the living room, looking around this unfamiliar place. "So, this is my new home?" I asked. "Yeah." She looked at me. "Why, don't like it?" I shook my head. "No, it's not that. I'm just not used to it. Coming out of that gilded cage and suddenly having a place of my own. I just didn't really know how to react." Wei Yuru walked over to the door and looked back at me. "Zhou Ting, you've already done what you had to do," she said. "From now on, you can do whatever you want." Whatever I want? I froze for a second. I don't know what I want to do. She stayed quiet for a moment, then said, then take your time and figure it out. You've got all the time in the world now. The door clicked shut. I stood there alone in that tiny apartment, listening to the occasional passing cars outside and the faint voices of the neighbors. It was so quiet, so unfamiliar. I walked over to the window, pulled back the curtains, and stared out at the night sky. The city was blazing with lights, the streets packed with traffic. But none of it had anything to do with me. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes. Observation log, day 14. New environment, new identity, new beginning, emotional fluctuations. The doctor said, this is what freedom feels like. I stared at those words for a long time. Freedom. Is this really freedom? I didn't know, but at least it was better than being back there. I set my phone down and lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. The ceiling was stark white, exactly like the one in solitary confinement at the correction center. But this time, I knew the door was unlocked. I could leave whenever I wanted and come back whenever I wanted. I guess this really is freedom. I closed my eyes, and suddenly, a memory flashed through my mind. A long, long time ago, there was a little boy brought into the Joe family for the very first time. He stood at the gates of the mansion, looking up at that grand, glittering house. He was so incredibly happy, thinking he finally had a real home. He had no idea, that wasn't a home. It was a grave, and now, that little boy is dead. The one left breathing is someone else entirely. Someone who doesn't need a home anymore. End of observation record, day 14. 1 month later, I sat in Wei Yuru's clinic, watching the sunlight outside the window. Today was my last psychological assessment. All my results are perfectly stable. Wei Yuru put down the report and looked at me. Congratulations, Zhou Ting. You've officially graduated. I nodded. I didn't feel anything in particular. This past month has been pretty peaceful for me. Waking up at 6 every morning, getting washed up, hanging my towel exactly 5 centimeters from the edge of the wall, and then going out for a walk. Buying groceries, cooking, reading, and sleeping. Sometimes, Wei Yuru would come find me, taking me to her clinic just to hang out. Or grab a bite to eat together. She told me I was recovering really well. I told her I didn't feel like I was recovering at all. She said, that's exactly how it should feel. What are your plans next? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. I don't know. Then it's fine not to know. She replied, you've got all the time in the world, anyway. I smiled. It was the first time I'd smiled in a month. Wei Yuru watched me smile, and something flickered in her eyes. But it vanished just as quickly. Zhou Ting, she suddenly called my name. Do you hate them? I froze for a second. To be completely honest, I don't know. A month ago, I really thought I didn't. Even now, I still don't think I hate them. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, staring blankly at the ceiling, certain memories just flash through my mind. My mom, holding Zhou Ming close, glaring at me with absolute disgust. My dad, standing on the steps, with his back turned to me. The sheer coldness on Zhou Qingyu's face when she signed that power of attorney. My second sister's chilling calmness when she handed in the fake evidence. The hidden smirk in Zhou Ming's eyes when he faked that fall. These scenes play on a loop in my head over and over, just like a movie. But the weird part is, when I watch these scenes play out, I feel absolutely nothing. It's like I'm watching someone else's story. I really don't know, I answered honestly. Wei Yuru nodded and didn't push any further. She stood up and walked over to the window, her back facing me. Zhou Ting, have you ever thought that maybe, someday, you'll actually forgive them? I looked at her back and thought about it, maybe, but that day is definitely not today. Wei Yuru didn't turn around, but I saw her shoulders shift just a little. Let's go, she said, I'll take you home. By the time we walked out of the clinic, it was already pitch black outside. The streets were pretty empty, and the streetlights stretched our shadows out long and thin. Wei Yuru and I walked side by side in complete silence. When we reached the door of my little apartment building, she stopped in her tracks. I'll leave you here, she said softly. I looked at her, the moonlight shining on her face. That face, always so composed, actually looked a little softer right now. Dr. Wei, I called out to her suddenly. Thank you. She froze for a second. Then, the corners of her lips curled up slightly. It was the very first time she'd ever made that kind of expression in front of me. Not her usual, polite smile, but a real one. You're welcome, she said. Take good care of yourself, Zhou Ting. I nodded, and she turned to leave. I stood at the door, watching her silhouette disappear into the night. Then I went upstairs, and unlocked my door. The room was so quiet. I walked over to the window. Looking out at the night view, the city was still just as bustling as ever. But this time, it didn't feel so alien to me anymore. My phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. Ting Ting, Mom is sick. Can you come home and see Mom? I stared at those words. Stared at them for a long, long time. Then, I just slid my phone back into my pocket. I didn't reply. I lay back down on my bed, staring up at the ceiling. It was still plain white. But this time, it didn't feel so much like a solitary confinement cell anymore. I closed my eyes, and those old scenes surfaced in my mind again. But this time, the images slowly faded. Like faded old photographs, disappearing bit by bit into the depths of my memory. Maybe one day, I'll go back, maybe I never will, but right now, I just want to get a good night's sleep. Observation log, final day. All vitals normal, objective complete, independent personality successfully established, the doctor said.